Well, good morning and welcome to City Hall. We're going to get started with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Scott Morris is the pastor at South Point Church. I'll ask him to lead us in the invocation. Afterwards, I'll ask Councilman Shadid if he'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. But would everyone please stand at this time?
Let's pray together. Good morning, Lord. Thank you so much for today, this beautiful fall day in Oklahoma City. Thank you for each council member, each leader in this room. We're here today and we ask humbly, Lord, for your blessing in this meeting. As Solomon prayed for wisdom and understanding, not for power and riches, because of that request, you blessed him and gave him wisdom and understanding, Lord. And we pray that today for our council members, for leaders in this room, that you would give them wisdom, understanding, insight into the decisions that they're going to make today. They carry such a large responsibility for thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. We ask that your hand and your spirit would lead them and guide them today in that. Lord, ultimately, we pray as you challenged us to pray, not for our will, but that your will would be done on this earth just as it is in heaven, Lord. We also pray that you would bless the families and the opportunities that you have before us here today. We love you. It's in your precious name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't suppose there's anyone in the room that has not been affected directly or indirectly by Parkinson's disease. And next month, we're going to have one single day in America in which we remind ourselves of the dangers of the disease and also just how devastating its effects can be. And we have some people here to help us for Parkinson's Awareness Day. We have it's a proclamation. I'll ask the clerk to read it and ask Bruce McIntyre to come forward. Where is Bruce? Right here in front. Go ahead, Francis.
Okay. Whereas the courage, determination, and resilience of Parkinson's patients and families continues to reflect the buoyant spirit of Oklahoma City and the state of Oklahoma. Whereas Oklahoma City has become a leader in service to Parkinson's disease patients and families through the efforts of the Parkinson Foundation of Oklahoma, as demonstrated by this inaugural Parkinson Oklahoma 2016 Blitz of 16 cities in 20 days. Whereas Parkinson patients in Oklahoma City have participated in such innovative programs as Speak Out, Voice Therapy, Loud Crowds, Parkinson Wellness Recovery, Physical Therapy, Rock Steady Boxing for Parkinson's patients, as well as novel approaches for support and education. Now, therefore, the Mayor of Oklahoma City, Mick Cornett, does hereby proclaim October 3rd, 2016 as Parkinson's Awareness Day in Oklahoma City.
Let's show our appreciation to those that are fighting this horrible disease. And Bruce is the Executive Director. Bruce?
Yeah, we have about 15,000 people approximately in the state of Oklahoma living with Parkinson's, and the Parkinson Foundation provides education, support, and effective therapy. And this year we are embarking on a new endeavor, 2016 Blitz, in which we will blitz 16 cities in 20 days, making connections and delivering inspiration and education for Parkinson patients around the state. And we kick it off in Oklahoma City on Monday. So,
Bruce, how would you characterize advancements in the research?
well, there's actually a boom and a flurry of activity in the world of research with Parkinson's. I just came back from Portland, the World Parkinson Congress, and one thing I would say is that the help is getting better and the hope is drawing nearer.
And I suppose if people have money to spare now or later on in the giving season, see you at the door, because this is a wonderful cause, and I know their charitable dollars will be spent well. But let's show our appreciation one more time to Bruce and his staff. Thank you for what you're doing for Parkinson's. Thank you. All right. And we are also coming up on Disability Awareness Month. So I'll ask everyone who's on the Mayor's Committee for Disability Concerns to come forward and face the audience. This committee was originally established some 45 years ago, and the city of Oklahoma City was one of the leaders in the country as far as addressing disability concerns. And it's not always known well to Americans, but the ADA, which the United States passed, decades ago, is still the gold standard in the world. Most of the rest of the world is still way behind on disability concerns. So we should pat ourselves on the back that we're amongst the leaders, but we should also continue to see what we can do to make places more accessible. Pam Henry, my longtime broadcasting friend and longtime chair of this committee, is going to speak in just a few moments. But first, let's hear the proclamation from the clerk.
Whereas the month of October 2016 is designated in the United States as National Disability Employment Awareness Month, leaders and citizens of the City of Oklahoma City in implementing the MAPS 3 projects are constructing new sidewalks and other facilities that will be disability accessible, and the city is also implementing a comprehensive ordinance requiring ADA accessible sidewalks on new and renovated major and minor arterial streets. Whereas Oklahoma City's ADA coordinator and staff work daily to implement the city's ADA transition plan and to ensure that the city's programs and facilities are accessible to all. Whereas our city needs the knowledge, skill, talent, and productivity of all of our citizens with disabilities to help build our city and energize our economy, and Oklahoma City residents with disabilities deserve the opportunity to work and have full lives. On October 25th, 2016, the Oklahoma City Mayor's Committee on Disability Concerns is providing a special seminar on ADA accessibility, and the theme for the year's event is Inclusive Scene in 2016. Whereas the 26th Annual Awards Luncheon will honor outstanding people with disabilities and persons and entities that support their well-being. Festivities will also honor area student poster artists by displaying their artwork created to help raise awareness of the progress for people with disabilities. Now, therefore, Mick Cornett, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim the month of October as Disability Awareness Month and Tuesday, October 25th, as Special Disability Awareness Day in Oklahoma City. And he urges observance by all citizens as a reminder that people with disabilities can learn, work, pay taxes, buy goods and services, be self-supporting, and lead others if given the opportunity.
Let's show our appreciation to those drawing attention to disability awareness.
Thank you, Mayor. Our current chair, Sidna Madden, has a terrible sore throat, so you know me, I'm always glad to talk. We want to thank the mayor, all the members of the city council, the city manager, the city clerk, and the new city ADA coordinator, Keith Wilkinson. And I want to thank the citizens. We want to thank the citizens of Oklahoma City for helping us get along and have better lives. The new sidewalks in MAPS 3 are fabulous. They help us get to bus stops. All the buses are accessible. But if you can't have transportation to a job, you can't work and support yourself. So God bless you all.
Thank you, Pam. And I do want to, just continue to draw attention to the fact that, it's not just government that's involved in this area. At the luncheon that we'll have on October 25th, we'll be honoring private sector organizations and people and individuals who have gone out of their way to try and be leaders in this area. You'll see companies who are making their retail businesses more established. You'll see architects who are designing homes and businesses to be more applicable to the disability concerns. So I think society as a whole has come a long, long way, and this committee is kind of overseeing and nurturing Oklahoma City's efforts. So one more round of applause for the people that work here, and Pam, thank you for coming down. All right, thank you. Thanks for your work. We're on item 3 of the council agenda. Item 3A is a notification of Councilman Pettis becoming the vice mayor for a 6-month period that begins October 11th. And I want to thank Councilman Greiner for serving the past 6 months as vice mayor, and look forward to working with John going forward. We also have a series of appointments. I'll look for a motion. All right, cast your votes on item 3. It passes unanimously. Item 4 is a journal of council proceedings. Item 4A is to receive the journal for September 13th, and 4B is to approve the journal for August 30th. We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or questions on the journal? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And item 5 is requests for uncontested continuances.
Mayor, we have several this morning, starting on page 24. On page 24, under item 9F1D, 215 Southeast 59th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner is removed. And then moving on to 9G1, item F, 1810 North Nebraska. We ask that that be stricken. The owner is secured. Item J, 1626 Northwest 7th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner is secured. Item K, 1628 Northwest 7th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item L, 1704 Northwest 10th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner is secured. And item M, 2109 Southeast 13th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured.
Any other requests for uncontested continuances?
There are more.
Oh,
Moving to page
you were
20.
just pausing.
I was pausing. Moving to page 25. Item N, 714 Northeast 17th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item O, 916 Northeast 20th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item Q, 519 Northwest 24th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item U, 1517 Southeast 46th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item X, 801 Northwest 96th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Moving to item 9H1D, 1910 North Nebraska. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. H, 1628 Northwest 7th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item I, 1704 Northwest 10th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item J, 2109 Southeast 13th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item K, 714 Northeast 17th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item L, 916 Northeast 20th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item N, 519 Northwest 24th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item Q, 1517 Southeast 46th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. And finally, item T, 801 Northwest 96th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured.
That's a long list.
And the process works. When you give them the notice and the people know that we're serious about it,
They take care of their business.
They take action.
Well, congratulations to the staff for getting so many of those issues resolved. Are there any other requests for uncontested continuances? All right, item 6 is revocable permits. We'll start with a request from Capitol Hill Main Street to hold the Fiestas de las Americas. And this would be October 1st. It'll be on Southwest 25th Street between Robinson and Hudson. And Donna Cervantes is here. Donna, hi, would you come up and tell us more about this event? Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
We'll need your name and address for the record, please.
Donna Cervantes, 319 Southwest 25th Street.
Okay. Tell us about the Fiestas de las Americas.
This will be the 11th annual year. We closed down the street at Southwest 25th between Walker and Robinson for an all-day event. We have added a 5K race. It'll be the second one this year with OKCPS really as our partner. We also have a parade that begins at 9 a.m. It celebrates Hispanic Heritage Month with culture and food and fun. We invite everyone to come out and enjoy.
And based on past years, how many people do you expect?
Oh, I'd say 12 to 15,000 come
Wow.
out throughout the day, and
And
looks
it's-
like the weather will be beautiful, so that's great.
October 1st, is that Sunday?
Saturday.
Saturday. Okay, so Saturday in Capitol Hill on 25th Street between Robinson and Hudson, a large gathering to celebrate Donna Cervantes' efforts with Fiesta de las Americas. I'll look for a motion from council. All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Good luck, and thanks for putting this on.
Mayor, I'd really like to thank Donna and Felix Linden for working so hard with city staff. This event is complicated when the 5K run was added to it, and we've worked out a couple of the wrinkles from previous years, and I know it's going to be a great success, but thanks for the diligence in making it happen.
Thank you for that support.
All right, item 6B is a revocable right-of-way use permit with Triathlon Club of Oklahoma City to hold the Fall Classic Duathlon. Is there anyone here representing this organization? All right, it's in Ward 1. James?
Yeah, I move for approval.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. That event is October 16th, and a duathlon, I'm assuming they're running and biking, would be my guess, around the Lake Overholser area. So if people want to get out and participate in that, we would sure encourage it. October 16th, and the event, well, I'm sure you can find online, is the Fall Classic Duathlon held by the Triathlon Club of Oklahoma City. All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. We'll recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. Sir, we have a motion on the MFA. Any comments or questions?
Just one brief comment on item B3, just because I get a lot of calls and comments and questions about North MacArthur between 150th and 164th.
We're on MFA right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I jumped ahead. I
All right.
apologize.
We'll
No,
get
I
to
think
you.
he's right.
That is MFA.
Yeah,
No, it's
It was on
B3.
the MFA.
It
Oh,
is.
I thought you said D.
No,
I was looking in the wrong place.
B3.
I'm
so
sorry.
At any rate, the point is I get a lot of calls and questions about MacArthur between 150th and 164th, and this is the engineering contract that's being proposed, and I'm told that the contract will be let approximately in the fall of 2018, so I just wanted to let people know that we're looking at MacArthur between 150th and 164th. Thank you.
All right. We have a motion, a second, ready to vote the MFA? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the OC MFA, convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. There are 7 items. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions here? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. I'll note that one of the items was the new professional for Trosper Park Golf Course, Brandon Alford. And I see Leroy Richardson here from the Golf Commission. Thank you for your work on this. And changing golf pros can be a traumatic experience for people that play at those individual courses. But we're very proud of our golf system. And so, Leroy, thanks to you, to the commission, and we wish Brandon the best of luck. We'll adjourn the OCPPA, convene as the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust. 2 items. All right, cast your votes on the EAT. It passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCEAT and reconvene the council meeting with the consent docket. Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there any individual comments from council on the consent docket? All right, we have a citizen that has signed up to speak. Kendall Dillon? Good morning. Kendall, we'll need your name and address for the record.
Good morning. Kendall Dillon. I'm with Craft and Toll, 214 East Main, and I actually represent the applicant on item number 7I1. This is a...
I1.
7I1.
This is a Ward 8 plat?
Right. It's for acceptance of a subdivision bond and a final plat. We found out last night that there's a small correction we need to make on a utility easement. So therefore, we would request that we just continue this application until your October 11th meeting to be able to revise that easement, and then that way the plat that you all accept is exactly the correct plat.
Okay.
So it's just a request that we continue it till October 11th.
All right, James, you want to make that part of the motion? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, we also have Ken Bryant here from the Planning Department to talk to us a little bit about item 7Q, which is being introduced and it's supposed to be heard. It says October 11th, but it's really going to be October 25th, so we do want to correct that date on there. But this is the de-annexation issue in by Mustang in southwest Oklahoma City. Ken?
Good morning, Ken Bryan, Oklahoma City Planning Department. I just wanted to make mention of this a petition for de-annexation. This is south of Mustang along the Highway 4 corridor. I guess the main takeaway is staff has spent quite a bit of time looking at this petition. We've had a handful of meetings with both the ad hoc council committee and internal meetings with staff as well. It was very difficult for us to find any benefit to the city of Oklahoma City or its residents in recommending approval of this de-annexation action. There's a very thorough current conditions analysis in the staff evaluation report. It was heard at Planning Commission a couple weeks ago to get their recommendation. They recommended approval, but they wanted some conditions concerning the right-of-way. The legal description, as proposed in the petition, splits many of the right-of-ways down there along section lines. It has some odd notches and things like that in it. It was feeling that it was somewhat of a piecemeal approach to moving corporate boundaries, and they would like to see some resolution to those concerns to be prepared as a companion item to go forward with the de-annexation ordinance. That kind of summarizes our analysis to date. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Summarize it better than that. Is staff recommending that we approve this or do not approve it?
Well, staff is recommending that the ordinance for detachment be denied.
Okay. And did a council committee look at this? Can you guys provide any feedback on one way or the other?
I have some comments about it. Not either pro or con with regard to whether we should do it or not, but this would be a major policy shift for the city to do this. It'd be a huge policy shift. In the past, we have de-annexed only very small portions of Oklahoma City, and we've generally put restrictions on them that they couldn't be sales tax generating places, parks, things like that. This is a totally different idea. This is based on the fact that we are not able to service the area, or not servicing to the level that people that want to move into that school district. It really had nothing to do with people wanting to move to Mustang. It has everything to do with people wanting to move into the Mustang school district. And so I think we need to really be, I have some personal feelings about it, but I'm trying not to be argumentative in that regard at this point, because it is a huge policy shift for the city. If we do this, there are areas all over the city that could be de-annexed. I mean, everywhere. This is not it's not isolated to Ward 3 around Mustang. I mean, it would occur in Midwest City and Del City and, all over the place. Mm-hmm. I mean, so if this is a policy direction we want to take, I think we need to do it very carefully.
The item is just being introduced today and will be setting for a final hearing on October 25th. So a vote today is not for the de-annexation. A vote today is just to move it forward. Anyone else on the committee want to speak?
Well, actually, this was brought to us by a developer, and it directly has nothing to do with schools. It has to do with the fact that this developer is in contract with an owner of some pieces of property which are involved in this detachment effort. And the city of Oklahoma City has told him, correctly so, that we have no intention of supplying water, we have no intention of supplying sewer, we have no intention of doing anything that would facilitate development of this property. This property touches on two sides the city of Mustang, and Mustang is willing and is committed to supplying utilities plus carrying police protection and fire protection for this area. So based on a very lengthy discussion at the Planning Commission, I think I'm correct in this, Jim, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to approve the detachment with conditions like squaring up some of the lots that we're talking about here, determining who is responsible for which streets for maintenance, et cetera. And based on that conditioning, the Planning Commission passed it along to us, and that's why we're right here right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just encourage everybody to read the staff report. I think they do a really good job of articulating the benefits and the cost of us doing this. And so you guys can figure it out on your own.
All right. David, are you representing the applicant or the developer?
David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. I do represent one of the property owners within the area to be detached, Walton Development. Councilman is right. It was approved by the Planning Commission, but there were no conditions placed on it. What was a part of their motion was an understanding that there would be an agreement between the City of Mustang and the City of Oklahoma City in the event that it is detached to handle things such as right-of-ways and things of that nature. I know that there is a desire to perhaps square up some of the right-of-way and square up some of the acreage. We're attempting to contact those owners of property. We have concerns that if they're not voluntarily joining us, that we can't perhaps force them to leave. So, but we are running that, but there wasn't specific conditions on the vote at the Planning Commission.
I see. Okay. And October 25th, is that the date you have as well? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Make sure everyone's noted on that. Any other comments or questions today? And again, a vote today is just to move it to a final hearing where we may get more input from other people. All right. It is a part of the consent docket. Any other comments or questions from anyone on the consent docket? Yeah.
Just briefly, item 7AY, which is a resolution accepting a donation of $50,000. I want to thank the Lions Club of Downtown Oklahoma City for this $50,000 donation. It's going to benefit Lake Hefner Playground for Children, and we really appreciate that generous offer.
That is generous. Thank you for pointing that out. All right, ready to vote? All right, cast your votes. The consent docket passes unanimously. We're on to the concurrence docket. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on anything under the concurrence? All right, looks like we're ready to go. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. That puts us to item 9. These are items that require a separate vote. We'll start with a series of items from the Traffic Commission. Well, that's coming up. First, item 9A is the closing of an alley. It's in Ward 6. Meg, you're right on time, and I know you don't have your microphone on, but we're on item 9A, which is the closing of the alley on Southwest 7th Street in Ward 6. You okay with this?
Yes, I am. I would move approval.
All right, is there a second? Cast your votes. Item 9A passes unanimously. And item 9B starts a series of items that come to us from the Traffic Commission. The first two are in Ward 6. The first is on Northwest 10th Street. Meg, you want to make a motion here?
Yeah, I have a series of these, and I would move approval on this one.
All right. That's a motion on item 9B1. Is there a second? Second. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9B2 is also in Ward 6. This one's on Hudson.
Yes, Mayor, I would move approval on that one.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9B3 is a parking issue in Ward 3. Ed, you okay with this?
Yes, move approval.
Second.
All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9B4, we're back in Ward 6 on Northwest 9th Street.
Yep, this is 60-degree angle parking on North Hudson, and I would move approval.
All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9B5 is, again, angled parking in Ward 6.
Move approval.
Second.
Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And item 9B6 is angled parking in Ward 2. Ed?
Move approval.
Second. All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9C is a public hearing regarding the Downtown Business Improvement District. Item 9C would adopt and confirm the assessment roll. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here hoping to speak on item 9C? All right, how about a motion then on item 9C? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And then item 9D is the official ordinance that would ratify the assessment roll. Is there a motion here?
Mayor, I do want to point out that there is a letter of concern by one of the residents that I think the DOKC is, and our staff will be working to try to resolve.
Okay.
I actually have been down there to see this alley, and it is a real problem. Even though the property owner continues to try to address it, trash and all sorts of other things continue to accumulate, so I would really appreciate it if, and I know DOKC has been down there, met with the property owner, but I would really appreciate it if we could follow up.
All right. Cast your votes on item 9D. It passes unanimously. I'll use this opportunity to say how grateful I am to the downtown OKC for all the work they've done through this business improvement district. I think it's been extraordinary, the successes we've seen over the last 15 years. Item 9E is an item that's going to be introduced today, and Wiley is here from the legal department who's going to explain it to us.
This is a change that the IRS is requiring as part of the rules and regulations due to a federal statute that was adopted in December. What it allows is another way for an employee to roll over their employee retirement system funds to a simple IRA. And it was part of a legislation that was passed last December. We have to have it in effect by the end of October.
And this affects our employees for the city?
Right. It gives them another option as a rollover for their pension funds if they choose to do that.
Got it. Item is just being introduced today. We'll have a public hearing on October 11th. Final adoption will be on October 25th, and it affects the employees for the city of Oklahoma City and the way we handle the payroll and the money and their benefits, and et cetera. Any other comments or questions from council on this item? How about a motion then to introduce it? All right, cast your votes. 9E passes unanimously. Item 9F is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9F? All right, how about a motion? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9G is a public hearing regarding unsecured structures. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9G? All right, how about a motion? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9H is a public hearing regarding abandoned buildings. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9H? All right, how about a motion? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9I is a public hearing regarding removal of properties from the abandoned building list. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9I? All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9J is a second public hearing, and this has to do
Public safety sales tax with fire items, and Doug Dollar is here to talk about the next two items.
Right, so this first item is related to the public safety sales tax, specifically the fire sales tax. We've got two projects that are being amended. The first is with the Advanced Life Support Project. They want some additional authority to buy additional defibrillators, and the second project is related to facility repairs and looking to do additional roof repairs that they thought they'd get started last year, weren't able to get them started. Now they want to get them started in the current year. So.
All right. Is that J and K?
That's J, and then K is the budget amendment. If you want, I can address that at the same time here. The budget amendment that's coming up is primarily our PO rollover. That's, again, purchase orders that were initiated in the prior year that weren't completed. We need budget authority to complete those in the current year, and then some changes in our stormwater drainage fund as well for some higher than expected contract costs there.
Okay.
Fairly standard.
All right. We have a motion on 9J. Is there a second? Is there anyone here hoping to speak on 9J? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And item 9K, is there a motion? All right, anyone here hoping to speak on 9K? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9L is also a public hearing, and this would be for the city to accept a grant. We have a couple of people that have signed up to speak on this item. Chief, you want to give us some opinion?
The Justice Assistance Grant is an annual grant. It's a 2-year grant, but we get it annually, and it's based on really a percentage. There's a set amount. The JAG's $495,000 and some change. It actually is supposed to be, it's dispersed between Oklahoma City, Oklahoma County, Del City, and Midwest City, and all that's based on a percentage of crime. So our cut of the $495,000 is $374,000. And right now, the projects we have for that is a continuation of our sex offender registration and our victim service coordinator positions. And then we had also set aside money for body-worn cameras, about $160,000, to finish out our body-worn camera purchases. But as of this morning, we received a $270,000 grant from the federal government for body-worn cameras, and we just received that. So it requires a match, so we'll have to use the money that we set aside. We'll repurpose it probably for vests. You just approved the addition of vests for active shooter vests, which is our ballistic vests that really where the rifle rounds cannot penetrate. So we'll probably repurpose that money for those vests.
All right. Any questions for Chief City? All right, we have a couple of people that have asked to speak. Larry D. Nath. I'll ask everyone that comes forward today to keep their comments to 3 minutes or less. Larry, we'll need your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Larry Naff. I live at 2708 Northeast 19th Street, Oklahoma City. For the most part, a lifelong resident of Oklahoma City. Raised on the east side, Ward 7. Councilman Pettis, good to see you again. I have addressed Councilman Petty on several occasions in reference to the body camera issue. I've been to a number of meetings in the past 12 months where Chief City has been in attendance, as well as he'll be at one tonight, and consistently I've heard the same comments in reference to the body camera situation. Of course, on the media back in November last year, I saw they had come to an impasse that, not to go into the specifics of it, because I'm trying to consolidate my 3 minutes into what I was reading about 10. I have quite a bit to cover, which again, I'll adhere to the 3 minutes that's allowed. Extremely frustrated. Chief City and Pettis, Councilman Pettis, opened a community forum over on Field Street, about less than a mile from here, back in February, and the dialogue contained a lot in reference to the impasse between the FOP and Chief City, which I commend. I have seen Chief City, as well as I will this evening, and I've observed his performance through his tenure in office. I have actually visited with him in his office with somewhat a related case of an elderly family members of mine whose grandson was killed, which I won't get in that portion of the conversation. But at that visit, I inquired, and that was in March, about the body cameras. And on minimum of 6 occasions, I've heard, in which I'll probably hear tonight, and last I think it was Wednesday, after all this began up in Tulsa, the FOP announced that there was something was up in reference to the body camera situation. And I said, great. I'm thinking that that's going to be, they've come to resolve. And again, not to get into specifics of it, because again, I'm trying to consolidate a lot in just these 3 minutes that's been allowed here. The impasse seems to me to be more of a political thing in terms of what the FOP is going to do for its bodies. And I have spoken to several police members who are members of the FOP, and they have no problems with the mandate that Chief City has. And again, I don't want to speak specifically on it because I don't know all the words used into it. It seemed to be in reference to certain things that FOP didn't want his people to have to be subject to for as supervisors reviewing the body of work they do in a day's time. But confusing me as a citizen, I can come and request at any given time, badge number, whatever, and see full carte blanche of what the particular entity has done for a day's period. Again, I got to apologize for the scattering of this, because I did have a lot, and I'm trying to consolidate it in, because I didn't know until this morning about the 3 minutes. But with that all being said, I won't say it being petty by no means. To me, I feel that the city is sitting on a powder keg. In one of the meetings that Councilman Petty extended some very informative information that Oklahoma City per capita leads the nation in incidents related to police and citizens. I have since seen updated and been heard that that's come down considerably, but in lieu of the national attention that we're getting presently, I would think the council that this is, for the most part, sitting on proverbial powder keg, to be quite frank, not to be alarmist about it by no means, but let's say being that we rank in such a high per capita probability of this type of event happening and let it occur, and we're just 90 miles up the road, it did happen. But be it here, the largest police body in our state is not wearing body cameras, and legislation has passed in a quicker time since November last year. Again, it behooved me last week when I heard that, for the most part, there's been no additional resolve to eliminate this situation.
Yeah, we're still working on it, Larry, and it is a frustration. I know I speak for myself, and I assume most of the council, that we have set aside these dollars for the body cameras. At this point, we are not legally allowed to use them in the manner because of the labor dispute that's currently, and we're limited on what we can say because it is ongoing.
I understand that.
I've allowed you to speak. I appreciate your comments, and I think we understand where you're coming from, and we're on your side. Mike Shelton.
Mike Shelton, 4125 North Everest Avenue. Thank you. And this is the first time I've had the opportunity to address the City Council, and if I get out of hand, just do what the House of Representatives does to me and turn off my microphone. But I just felt like I needed to be here to just come and first of all, I want to commend the police chief for working diligently on this issue and the importance of our police protecting themselves, the city, and its citizens by having on body cameras. I would like the City Council to continue to push this issue. The eyes of the nation are on Oklahoma today and have been for the last several days, specifically today because thousands of people will be marching in downtown Tulsa for peace and justice. And this for Oklahoma, this for specifically Oklahoma City is extremely important to bring peace, to bring trust between community and police back to the streets of Oklahoma. And I'm asking, as a citizen, as a 12-year legislator of a community that has cried for this issue to be resolved, I'm asking the City Council to work to push to make sure that police have body cameras.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate your patience, Mike. Thank you. All right. The public hearing is now concluded, and this is on the acceptance of a grant that Chief City discussed. Is there a motion on 9L? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9M are some appointments for the Wheeler Development District. This would put Pete White and Meg Salyer and Mary Malone as the 3 at-large members. Is there a motion? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9N is a resolution that would do some reconciliation of city funds.
New policy in the Finance Department. Bob Pondkiller, our city treasurer, is here today with Jason Martinez.
As we start getting things set up, I can go ahead and just give you an overview of some of what we'll be talking about today. We've all seen the stories in the newspaper or papers over the last few months and even in the last few years where we've seen these incidences of embezzlement, fraud, that type of thing. And it's not just with local governments, it also has to do with private industry. So it's a very common occurrence, and one that it was brought to our attention that we felt there was a need to establish what we thought would be more basic controls that we could apply consistently throughout the city, hopefully to prevent that type of occurrence here at the city. One of the things that we looked at as we started working with setting up this new policy is that when we talk about incoming receipts to the city, that affects a number of people, and there are a number of responsibilities associated with that. It can be from the cashier that's taking in the funds all the way up to the department head, making sure that they do have good, strong controls within the departments. We wanted to, again, make sure that we had basic controls, internal controls established within the city. And that can cover a number of things. You know, some of the things that we had will be covering as we talk about guidelines that will accompany this policy are things like basic things. You know, are you securing cash at your locations? there are approximately 70 different locations within a city where we're taking in forms of payment. So, making sure that we have those basic controls in place. We also wanted to make sure that we're training properly all of our cashiers within the city, that they are going through a basic cash handling training class. And that's going to talk about things as basic as, how do you count back change properly? Do you know how to identify counterfeit currency? Do you know what the components are to a check? Those are some basic things that we want to ensure that all cashiers within the city know about. But probably the two key factors that we want to address in these controls are going to be related to, and you're probably aware of these just as business people, segregation of duties. We don't want one person handling all functions, meaning, we don't want somebody taking in the money at a point of sale. We also don't want that person making the deposits. That person shouldn't be involved in making sure that those entries don't get to the books. So we want to make sure we've got that structure throughout the city in all areas that are taking receipts. But the other thing, I guess the other factor that we've seen over the years that we see as very key is making sure that departments are aware that they should have procedures in place for reconciliation. Again, getting back to that point of sale, deposits, books. We see that this is a very strong control to make sure that things are entered accurately, and if there are any discrepancies, that they're located quickly. The structure of the policy itself is set up to where you have the policy that you'll be approving, hopefully today, and what that establishes is the responsibilities from everybody from me to the department heads to the cash handlers. And we'll be accompanying that policy with some guidelines, again, that will outline all of these basic controls that we'll want in place within the departments. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jason, and he's going to describe these responsibilities to you.
Thank you, Bob. As Bob pointed out, the policy defines key responsibilities for himself, as well as the department heads and the cash handlers here at the city. The key responsibilities for the city treasurer includes creating a set of guidelines that are going to apply citywide to all departments. Now, these guidelines can be seen as broad principles, internal controls, basically, for the receiving of payments, the safeguarding of payments, the depositing of payments, and the reconciliation of payments. The treasurer is also tasked with creating a training program. It will have two parts. The first part will be training cash handlers on the basic tenets of how to receive payments here at the city. The second part of the training program is going to be training supervisors on the internal controls surrounding their cash handling operations here at the city. We're going to talk with supervisors about how fraud can be committed and how it's been committed in the past at the city. And hopefully we can mitigate some of these occurrences from happening in the future. Now, in the regard to the cashiers themselves, if I could circle back around, we are going to be training all existing cashiers up front, but then we're going to have an ongoing training program to train cashiers as they are hired so that we can say that all cashiers have been trained in what the responsibilities are and what the guidelines say. They're going to have to pass an exam that requires them to become certified, basically, in the tenets of cash handling before they actually handle cash. The treasurer is also tasked with enforcing the policy. The treasurer can engage cash handlers if they're not following the guidelines and decertify them if necessary to keep them from handling cash. He'll also engage departments on overages and shortages, as well as engage departments if he feels like they're not following these guidelines that apply to all departments citywide. These are not all of the responsibilities of the city treasurer, but these are the major ones. In regard to the department director responsibilities, quite simply put, they're going to need to comply with the policy in the city treasurer guidelines, but also allow the treasurer access to their areas if he feels like the guidelines are not being followed. The treasurer may also be invited into those areas by the department directors on a proactive basis to just give an overall assessment of what their internal controls are in their cash handling areas and assess what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. We've done this in the past with other departments with great success. In regard to the cash handler responsibilities, again, they need to comply with the policy and the city treasurer guidelines and report any loss or theft within 24 hours. They will also be subject to disciplinary action, and the reason for this is because up until now we haven't had a cash handling policy, and I have been contacted by supervisors in the past because they've had infractions or losses in their area asking for a copy of our current adopted policy, and I've had to tell them, well, we don't have a policy that's ever been adopted by City Council, which is why we're really here today. We want to get this policy in place. We want to define what the responsibilities are, and so going forward, you know, they are tasked with following those responsibilities, and the policy is really clear on that progressive discipline can apply. If I could summarize what I've just told you, whether we're talking about the treasurer's guidelines that he will be putting out or the training program that we're going to be putting out there or even the enforcement, it's all proactive in nature. We want to train departments, train cashiers to maybe get out ahead of some of the fraud or some of the problems to prevent it from happening in the future. I'll turn it back over to Bob.
So all of that being said, we do have a plan for implementing this policy. Again, as Jason mentioned, we've got training programs. We'll be talking to supervisors. We'll be performing training over the, our plan is actually to have all cashiers within the city having gone through the formal training within the next 6 months. So it's a pretty aggressive process.
Bob, what type of activity is handled in cash? Which parts of all the activities that the city does are you most concerned about, and where is most of the cash coming in?
Well, we have a number of areas. Like I said, we have around 70 different areas in the city
70?
that are taking some, yeah.
So, for instance, at the water department,
would be
people come in and pay their water bill by cash occasionally?
Well, and this really covers, we say it's cash handling, but it really covers any kind of receipt payments that are coming into the city. Just managing that control, that cashier functions.
I see. So when you're saying cash, but it's really just having a cashier who handles all sorts of receipts and revenues.
Yes.
Okay.
Golf courses would be an example where there's a lot of cash.
Golf courses, development center, taking in permits, courts, you know, there's...
Civic center?
Absolutely.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
All right.
But as Jason said, we do have a pretty aggressive plan in place for implementing, getting the training out there. We feel that having strong controls in place like this and being applied consistently throughout the city will provide a strong basis for good management within all of these payment centers. And we feel that with these in place that should go a long way with keeping us out of the newspapers.
Yeah,
with that being said, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Well, you know, a lot of these situations, we have contracts with people that are operating these facilities. And so do we have to alter all the contracts? Or how is our policy implemented on someone who we have an agreement with that they're operating the facility?
That's a very good question. This policy will apply to all city employees that are within those positions throughout the city. You're right. We would expect that with a separate contract in place, that contract would cover those responsibilities for those contractors.
Okay.
And Bob, this looks like a really good plan. Have you worked with the city auditor in developing this plan?
That's very good. Another very good question. When we were developing the plan, we looked at best practices and organizations, national organizations, publications that they were putting out. We met with city auditor to get his input. But we also felt very strongly about meeting with each of our stakeholders, each of the departments, to talk to them because most of them had procedures in place. We wanted to make sure that we incorporated what they were doing and then, again, be able to apply consistently throughout the city because, in different areas we're maybe doing things that we thought were great ideas that we thought we should be doing across the city.
So, just to clarify, this policy will cover SMG, the group that handles our COTPA, Boathouse Foundation, all of those entities. It will or will not.
Well, our intent with the policy itself is that it'll cover those areas where city employees are handling those cashiering functions. So that would be more like the development center, utilities, courts, those type of things.
Okay.
Those are all kind of different situations. SMG is a large deal. When we renew the contract with them, I'm sure we'll get that put in. The Boathouse Foundation is a little more removed from our organization, so that may or may not be there for a while, I would guess.
When we had the embezzlement at the parking garage, those weren't city employees, right? That's contracted out.
They were not city employees. They were
Right.
contractors.
Right.
Okay. Well, Bob, thanks for your work on this.
You bet. Thank you.
Huh? All right, is there a motion on item N? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 9O is a resolution that refers to the 5-year capital improvement plan, and I think Doug's coming back up.
I'm pleased to be here before you, Mayor and Council, to talk about our 5-year CIP plan. This is for fiscal year 17 through fiscal year 21. This is a plan that's required to be adopted every 2 years by the Council, and it's reviewed by the Planning Commission as well and approved by them. Both city ordinances and state law require this process. And so, again, you have in your packet the full plan, and just want to tell you a little bit about what's in that. What's in that document. It's 165 pages. There's a lot in there. But we've got sources that come, the projects come from a number of different sources. The authorized GO bond program, departmental business plan, specialized studies such as the Parks Master Plan. Of course, the citizen survey informs department objectives as well as council priorities. I do want to note one thing that's not included in the 5-year CIP plan, and that's GO bond projects that have not been authorized yet. So we've got the GO bond potentially coming up here in 2017 for authorization. The projects in this plan do not include those projects yet. The timing for the two processes just did not line up at this point. There's just too many variables still in the GO bond planning for 2017 in terms of the size, time frame, how the projects might be distributed between the various propositions, that we didn't want to put together a giant wish list of all the projects that might be out there in this document. So what we have in here are those that have already been authorized either through the bond program or through trust or other programs like that. As we look at what's in the plan, it totals $2.8 billion, and we've got a pie chart, if you can move on to the next one there, that kind of gives the breakdown of what makes that up. You'll see that the trust funds are the largest portion of that $2.8 billion, with water utilities being the largest share of that at $1.3 billion. Of course, the airport trust is another piece of that trust funds portion there. Special tax funds at 20.6% are the second largest contributor, and MAPS 3 is the largest piece of that at $546 million. GO bond funds account for 11.8% or $334 million. And then the unfunded portion that's in there is about 7.8%. That includes a few projects that have been identified at the Civic Center Music Hall, some projects in parks for multi-generation recreation centers, and a Bricktown ballpark improvements, and then also our police and fire fleet replacement coming up for fiscal year 18 and 19. Grant funding is 3.6%. The vast majority of that's at the airports. And then other funds come in at 2.2%, the majority of that being our capital improvements project fund. As we look at the projects by function, public services is the largest piece at 67%. Again, that's utilities, public works, airports, and that's about $1.9 billion there. Culture and recreation at $753 million, or 26.5%, includes parks, fairgrounds, zoo, riverfront, MAPS 3, civic center, and golf courses. Public safety at 3.3%, or $93 million, includes the police and fire fleet replacement and finishing up the new courts complex. And then general government at 2.6% or $73.7 million is comprised of our general fleet replacement, technology, and capital maintenance on city facilities. This final breakdown that we've got here, again, just kind of looks at them by project type. If you're interested in seeing those, that's at the very back of the document there, page 165. Again, utilities, the largest share at $1.3 million. I won't go down through the other categories. You can see them there. But again, $2.8 billion is our total over the next 5 years. As we look at the schedule for what we've got here, the introduction of the plan is today, and we're asking you to refer this to the Planning Commission for their review. We anticipate having presentations to the council as well as to the Planning Commission by the departments, the major departments. So Public Works, Utilities, Airports will be coming to council over the next 2 meetings. And our plan is for the Planning Commission to adopt this on October 27th. And then we would have a public hearing and adoption by the council on November 8th. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about this.
The utilities number was so much larger than the other categories. Is that the pipeline? What?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, it's pipeline as well as just their normal main replacement and expansion of their system.
But the big piece of it
Is the construction to a pipeline, is, so everyone knows, to Atoka, second pipeline to Atoka for water supply uses for the rest of the century. So, yeah, that explains the discrepancy. Anybody else want to have a comment today? Sounds like we're going to have several opportunities to have some input in this. Doug, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, this is a resolution on the 5-year capital plan. Is there a motion? Cast your votes. 9-0, passes unanimously. All right, item 9P has to do with the opportunity the city may have to engage with a private sector developer to construct a hotel that would be placed adjacent to the MAPS 3 Convention Center. And Kathy's here to talk about the opportunity. Kathy?
Thank you, and good morning, Mayor and City Council. This morning there's an item on your agenda. A resolution authorized the city manager and myself to begin negotiations with Omni Hotels for the development of a convention center hotel, and directing staff to bring back to you a funding plan for any public participation that's required for the project. As a little bit of background on this project and how long we've been working on it, we began late in 2014 with stakeholder meetings and briefings to the City Council to try to get a better understanding of what your expectations were about this project, and to provide you with some educational materials and background information about how convention center hotels are developed across the country. In January of 2015, we issued a request for proposals, and we received about 7 or 8 responses to that RFP. In March of 2015, the selection committee met, and we identified 4 firms that, based on their experience, their qualifications, their financial capability, that we believed could provide a convention center hotel in Oklahoma City. Those 4 firms were Marcus Hotels, Mortenson, Matthews Southwest, and Omni. At this point in the process, we had to put the procurement process on hold while the City Council deliberated the relocation of the convention center to the current site and undertook that site selection process. So earlier this year, we we re-engaged with the 4 development teams and began having meetings with them and discussions with them about the project. We tried to keep them in the loop so that they would continue to be interested in Oklahoma City as a market. In June, we issued a request for additional information to the development teams, and we received the responses in August of this year. We received 2 responses. Marcus and Mortenson teamed up together, and Omni also submitted a response. Before the responses were due, we had received a letter from Matthews Southwest letting us know that they would like to withdraw from the process because of other commitments they had around the country. And then where we are today is that the selection committee met last week, and they have made a recommendation to you this morning that we would like to go through and walk through the proposals with you, and walk through some of the rationale behind the recommendation today. So just as a little bit of context, we asked each of the teams to provide additional information to us for a 600-room convention center hotel that had 50,000 square feet of meeting room and ballroom space. It needed to be an upper upscale brand, and that's a defined term in the hotel industry that convention center hotels typically fit that type of product. The developers were asked, they were able to propose alternatives if they chose to. They were not required to. They were informed that parking was not included as a part of, they were not to include parking as a part of their project. And as I mentioned before, we received two proposals from the 4 developers. These are images that were submitted by, this image was submitted by Mortensen and Marcus. They proposed a Marriott hotel, and again, these are concept designs. They are not the final design. There will be a lot of work that's done with the city team in order to finalize the concept designs and bring back to you to bring back to you the final designs. So this is from Mortensen and Marcus, and this one is the proposal from Omni. Obviously both of the hotels are sited at the site that's been identified for the potential hotel at between Southwest 3rd and Southwest 4th at Robinson. With that, I'd like to, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Morsch with Public Financial Management. Public Financial Management is the city's financial advisor, but they've also been serving as our consultants on this, on the process, and will be helping us with the negotiations with the firm if council chooses to go forward.
Thank you, Kathy, and good morning. It's nice to see you all again. As Kathy indicated, we did take a pause in the project as the convention center was being re-sited, and happy to say that we were able to re-engage the developers. We designed a procurement process that allowed for competitive proposals from the different development teams specific to the site. So in addition to the concept designs that Kathy showed you just a moment ago, we asked for detailed pro formas from each of the development teams that projected out the performance of the hotel and over a period of time. And in that way, we were able to analyze the proposals to see that they held together, they made sense, they were consistent with industry experience and industry standards. And so it was quite a rigorous process that the development teams had about 3 months to put together their, or 2.5 months or so to put together their concepts, do the design work, the initial design work, and then put together a financial projection on how the hotel would perform. With that data, we were able to, and up here on the slide here, you can see kind of the details at a high level of the proposals of each of the teams. You can see that they're, as Kathy indicated, they both proposed 600-room hotels. We did have some opportunity for them to come back with comment. We had meetings with the teams prior to submitting their proposals where they could ask questions, they could interact. They had access to all the different reports that were done by Stone a number of years ago about the convention center. They had historic data on room rates in Oklahoma City. They had performance data on all the other hotels. They had convention, visitor information. So they took all of that, put that together, and came up with their proposals on what the hotel would look like in Oklahoma City. So while it's at a concept level, we feel that it's robust. It's not, this is not make-up numbers. These are real numbers based on real data coming in. They have different teams in terms of how they would operate the hotel. The Marriott was proposed as really a franchise operation, with Marcus being a franchise operator. The ownership was to be determined. They would go get an owner once they raised financing and knew what the rest of the project looked like. They had, their architectural team was the same team that's doing the convention center project. And then you can see the amount of square footage, total square footage, and cost per square foot. The Marcus and Mortensen proposal was a estimated $248 million hotel project. In terms of Omni, Omni is a somewhat unique in the whole hotel industry. They're a fully integrated company. They do design, ownership, and operation of all their, or most of their facilities. They're not a franchisee, so it would be owned and operated by Omni. And you can see there they have a contractor team identified. There would be no finance team because they'd be using equity. Omni has a strong balance sheet and would be using cash to fund their portion of the project. They would operate the project in-house with their in-house teams. They have an architect by the name of HKS, and you can see the result of that concept design. And then the square footage and cost per square foot for an overall development cost of $235.5 million. Additionally, as I indicated on the next slide, we have further details that were contained in the pro forma. This is the kind of information that we look at to verify against other projects, to know that it that their business plan holds together. And you can see that both proposals were really right on top of each other in terms of their projected occupancy of the hotel, the rates that would be charged, net operating income pretty comparable, across the board. Reflective of a little different approach of the teams on how they focus. The Omni proposal did have a lot of food and beverage and retail, and I think feels that there's some real revenue opportunities there with creating kind of the foot traffic and the excitement of that corner that it's going to have with both the Chesapeake Center, with the new convention center, with the new park that, you can all go out there and look and ground is broken. It's going to be an exciting new kind of center point of downtown Oklahoma City, and I think that's built into the pro forma there and the expectations by Omni. I'll pause there for a question if anybody has any. And we had Councilman McAtee and Greenwell were part of the selection committee, and Kathy will kind of go in the details of that in a minute. The next slide summarizes...
Can I ask you one question?
Of course.
What would be the reason for the $114 a square foot discrepancy between the two proposals? Me at $413 and the other at $527.
Actually, a lot of that difference is in soft costs, believe it or not. In one team proposed a fairly sizable development fee and financing costs because they don't have the equity. They would have to go raise money, and they have to pay people to do it. So a lot of it, actually, a good chunk of it is soft costs.
Is financing costs?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was my question too. It was hard to understand.
Yeah, no, that's
the
the
lot
biggest.
More building for a lot
That's the
less
biggest
cost.
component of the difference, and equity is a good thing, as we all know. So it's an attractive, strong proposal in that respect. I don't mean to preview a recommendation of the committee, but it was pretty clear. So if we look at kind of the bottom line. Our goal was to try and drive the developer contribution as high as we could get it. And so this is, if you look at the total development cost, you look at the developer contributions. In the case of Mortensen Marcus, that was their proposed structure. They would raise equity and debt from investors. In the case of Omni, it's a $150 million investment on their part. For the hotel. That leaves with a kind of a gap ranging from 85 to 105 million. And you can see there one of the metrics that we've been tracking here is the public participation as a percentage of the total cost. If you go to the next slide, just in the context of other hotel deals around the country, kind of where you sit in that mix. Now, it's not exactly apples and apples, and you see a lot of footnotes on this page because we wanted to make sure that we had the data as good as we could get it for you. But I think the market here is strong. We're I think these numbers are reflective of a growing city where the investment dollars, certainly Omni has represented that they want to be in Oklahoma City, they want to put their money here, and they believe it's a place to make a good investment. I mean, that's exciting. That's really exciting about this process that we came up with here. A couple of those projects are actually under construction right now, so these are pretty real numbers. If anybody has questions, Councilman Shedid.
I do. I just want to make sure that I have an understanding of the total costs. Like Portland excluded their land costs. The total amount that we've spent so far on acquiring this land is how much?
I don't have the land acquisition numbers, Councilman Kathy's.
As of today, we haven't expended any funds on land acquisition, but we're in the acquisition process.
Well, and what would you estimate that's going to be?
We have set aside $7 million from the Skirvin Fund. That's what's available. I'm hoping that it is substantially less than that.
Okay. And then there's the parking garage, and we still would need to negotiate the arrangement between the hotel and how much they would pay for the parking garage lease.
Yeah, they will need parking. They will have to lease from the parking that's available for the convention center.
Okay.
Yeah, it won't.
But we're looking for $10 million.
It won't be a gift.
Well,
we would expect it to be a straight business arrangement.
Okay, but you could lease it for $1.
You could lease it for $1 million too. So that would be a future to be determined issue.
Okay.
But certainly we have no preconceptions about that at this point. When we got proposals, we didn't want to get, parking was very confusing to the developer teams when we met with them because they said, well, how much? How much parking? Do we want a lot of parking, a little bit of parking? Do we have to get parking for the convention center? Do we have to get parking for the park? Do we have to get parking for the Chesapeake Center? So it was very confusing. So it was better to take it out of the proposals. At least that was the judgment of the team.
We do have a history of leasing parking spaces in public facilities to hotels. I'm thinking of the Sheraton in particular. So, we have some basis that we could analyze what that value would be back to the project.
Okay. So basically, we would borrow the $85 million and then use different revenue streams, whatever financing plan we come up with, to pay back the $85 million.
Not necessarily. It depends. We have not negotiated. Today's action is not about the financing. I mean, we're going to tee up some of the financing topics because we know that's of interest to everybody. But today is not, we don't have a finance plan for you. So whether we would borrow money or not, we don't know that yet. We may pay money over time. Those are just items to be negotiated at this point.
You have to have the capital up front to build the structure so that let's say it's $85 million. I know you're going to negotiate that.
Yeah.
But let's say it's $85 million. You have to come up with that money up front. So that money has to be acquired. I understand you want to try and pay some out over time. But the bulk of that, wouldn't you have to have up front? And so what I'm getting at is there are going to be interest costs. Just like Mortensen had to put their financing costs in there per square foot, we're going to have to pay some interest, right?
Right.
So it's not.
Yeah, that's true with any kind of financing or anything. So we try to present value all the numbers so that you can get a good idea of what the value of that is today. So that all these numbers up here are all present value number. These are all kind of calculated on the same basis.
Well, let's say, for example, that we couldn't pay it out over time and we had to borrow the money. What could the city of Oklahoma City borrow? What kind of interest rate? What kind of terms? 10 years, 20 years?
Kenny or others can certainly address that. There's so many variables that go into that answer.
Okay.
I'm not trying to avoid it. It just.
Yeah, the next part of the presentation is to go through the funding sources and to talk about some of the assumptions that are behind them. The plan today is, as Tom said, is to tee up some ideas about how the public participation could be funded. It is not a recommendation about how it will be funded. That will come back to City Council at a later date. But Kenny Sudol with the Finance Department has more information about that we'd like to go through next.
And I guess the question I have, and I want to make sure I'm clear on this, is that the public participation component is something that will be heavily negotiated. This is just their first proposal, correct?
Right, and I wanted to just back up 1 minute, too. The financing costs that Mortenson included in their proposal is not the interest that they will pay to borrow the money. It's a developer fee. I mean, there may be some of that, but it isn't just it isn't interest. It may be capitalized interest, but not the long-term interest that they would pay on the debt that they're assuming in the project. Does that make sense? Yes, yeah, a good part of it, yeah.
But coming back to your question, the answer is yes. We will, our objective will be to get to the right, a final is the right number. But I think these are indicative numbers. These are numbers that came out of a result of a competitive process. This is not, I tried to indicate, it's not, the number's not going to be half what it is. These are good numbers where we're at, indicative. Now, our goal is, and I think all the parties, including Omni, are incentivized to come to the table to drive the number down, because otherwise you're going to have trouble with it and we're going to have trouble with it, right? So we've got to end up with a project that makes sense. What I'm encouraged about here is we're leveraging a huge amount of private investment here with these dollars. And so from that point of view, I think, in looking around the country, I think we have a really attractive deal here in terms of a convention center hotel.
During the negotiation, is there going to be negotiation on number of rooms? Because I know that was one of the number of rooms and size of ballroom and all of those things that I think probably cause the public assistance that's needed. And then in the 500 block room, is that going to be part of the negotiation, or are we just going to be negotiating how the things are actually financed?
I would say every topic is on the table, but I think, we've had a lot of experts look at the issue of how many rooms, and, everybody has come to kind of a consensus around 600. Yeah. It's not exactly, it could be 580, it could be 620, it could be, but I think what we've taken out of the process is that it's not going to be 400. 400 will not do the job, and there are lots of people and lots of experts that have indicated that, and that's a clear direction from the chamber, and it's a clear direction from everybody that we need to have significant room blocks to bring in new sets of conventions here to Oklahoma City to grow the business.
Well,
And 400 won't get us there.
Well, I don't think you can say that 400 rooms won't assist in helping the convention center be successful. It might not be as successful as 600 rooms, but I don't think you can say that it won't be.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. That's a fair statement. Now, obviously, there's levers that we can look at to change the subsidy. We could take out a bunch of rooms, and that would change the construction cost and therefore the subsidy on an almost dollar-for-dollar basis. But remember, when you reduce the rooms, you reduce the revenue. So there are levers that go like this. So you got to be working all the levers. It's like a dashboard.
You also reduce your ability to compete with other cities that have 600, 700, 800 rooms.
Correct. And I've showed you some cities here that, I mean, we're going to be competing against Nashville, Fort Worth, Louisville, and Dallas, and Denver, and others. That's where you want to be, and that's where we started the process, is we want to be with those cities, among those cities, competing with those cities, growing like those cities, building an Oklahoma City that is competitive. And that was the goal. So,
But also, I mean, it's the 500,000 square feet of ballroom meeting space. I mean, just the average person viewing this is not going to really think that that makes any sense when we're already building a convention center right across the street that has this already. And, you know, do we need that? Is that actually needed? And I think that's a legit question, and I think that we probably want it, but I'm not sure we need it.
Those are all good questions, and those will all be topics that we will spend a lot of time drilling down on.
Yeah.
And those will be the substance of what we would come back to you with in November. And maybe it's almost a workshop session. I don't mean to try and project the future here, but maybe we have to kind of engage in those type of discussions so you feel comfortable that we've really kind of squeezed this thing where we can squeeze it.
Right. Just one question maybe to Larry or those who've served on the committee. This number, 85 million, comes in, in the same ballpark as everything else that's happening across the country. It's what the Urban Land Institute study predicted. It's what the Convention Sports and Leisure study predicted. You've been saying, Larry, for a number of years here that you're hopeful that we won't have a subsidy. Were you disappointed? Were you surprised? Were you saddened that goal wasn't met?
Am I disappointed that the goal wasn't met? Yes. Was I saddened that the goal wasn't met? Yes. Do I think that we can meet the goal? At this point, the information that I have, no. Therefore, if we want to move forward, we've got to move to a participation level that's higher than I would like to see, but you're going to have to make a decision. That's a collective view. Is it worth the risk to get the reward? And I'll just give you my upfront take. The answer to that question is yes, it is worth the risk.
Ed, if I may comment on this, this is one side of the question. How much will it cost the city to participate in this activity? What would be helpful, I think, to both the council as well as the citizens of Oklahoma City is to receive data that will reflect the proposed return on an investment, just like a business would look at. Should we invest in this new facility? What will the business receive in return for making this type of capital investment? And I think we can get those numbers to show what type of return the city in the form of additional sales tax receipts will receive over the life of this project.
And also, I would like to see how many jobs would this development create locally, because some of the complaints that I've heard about this whole convention center hotel is the simple fact that majority of these jobs will be outsourced out. So I want to make sure that the construction jobs are local, as well as hotel workers. How will the Omni recruit workers to work in the hotel?
And I agree with what you said. The one thing that I looked at that was somewhat helpful was the December 17, 2013 economic impact that was put together by OCU, specifically Kyle Dean and Russell Evans, and the jobs that it talks about creating not only in the construction phase, but also during the operational phase was encouraging to me.
Yeah. I'd like to ask about the city's presumed risk. It was based on a 71% occupancy. Let's say it's 61%. Is the city at risk on the operations side long term, or is Omni assuming all the risk for the success of the hotel?
No, Omni is assuming those risks. And so our goal when we come back to you, we would have a negotiated development agreement. That development agreement would outline the construction schedule, the construction cost. It would cap your participation, and Omni would then take the risk for the balance of the project, both for delivery of the project and then for the operational side of it. We would also expect that there will be ground rent. There are ground rents in the pro forma that would be due to the city, as well as potential participation on excess performance.
Yeah.
To the extent that there's excess performance, we'll seek to negotiate some kickers for you all.
There's multiple scenarios out there as to what the funding the gap could be. a lot of the scenarios are money from TIF 2 or monies from the TIF on this building and Skirvin proceeds, and those are not variable costs depending upon how the Omni performs. So most of those could be taken care of. Part of those could be variable based upon performance, and that would include a sales tax TIF if we did that, and a hotel motel tax TIF on that.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be the lion's share, but it would be a small portion of that funding that would go forward. Tom, is that?
That's correct.
Yeah, it probably should be pointed out to somebody who's watching this and had no preconceived ideas going in, that a significant amount of the public participation will come from the building's performance itself, and presumably would not be available to the deal if the building were not built. And so the idea that we could take this what could be a significant size of money and spend it on something else that the general public might prefer is really not one of the options. We're looking at how can this building perform and help pay for itself, and what we're looking for really is that delta. What's going to be left over, and how would we somehow finance that or find an appropriate way of meeting that obligation.
And about half of the subsidy could be filled in from that property tax TIF, sales tax TIF, and motel hotel tax TIF that are generated from the building itself. So about half of it would fall into that.
It seems to me that we should look at this as an opportunity because of the MAPS 3 Convention Center. The citizens have allowed us to invest in this convention center. We have an opportunity because of that investment to have a hotel built adjacent to the building. We can choose to have that hotel built in negotiations with a developer, perhaps this one, perhaps somebody else, or we can choose not to. But this should be looked at as an opportunity that the city has that it wouldn't have had if MAPS 3 had not passed otherwise. And generally the council is pretty risk averse. So the idea that we're not at risk for the successful operations of the hotel, I think, is a very important variable here. And there have been other cities around the country that have taken on some of that risk. And sometimes it hadn't gone well. And I think, one of the things we've done is we've learned from a lot of the cities that have come before us. And there have been a number of them over the last 10 years that have put these types of deals together, and we've been able to see what worked and see what didn't work. And keep in mind, a resolution passing today is not agreeing to any sort of agreement with this developer or any other developer. It is merely to allow our staff to begin the process of negotiation on the financing of it. They need council approval to negotiate this deal. Any deal is going to come back to the council and have considerable public debate before it is solidified. Meg?
I just had two quick comments. One is I think your point is really well taken, that this is an opportunity. We need to look at not the positive side of the question about do we do this, but what happens if we don't. I mean, there is a big risk to a number of investments that we've made if we don't take this step forward, and I think that's really worth thinking about. And as you look at those proposals, I am really comforted by the fact that Omni would be the developer, the owner, and the operator.
Yeah, I mean, if we opened up a debt-free convention center, we're going to get positive gain going forward from that regardless of what we do. The point is, what is going to be our return on investment? How do we get the best ROI for the investment? And based on other cities' experiences and the consultants that have been brought into the conversation, it would seem that a deal like this or something similar is going to increase the ROI. But that has to be something that the council is comfortable with. And so my preference is that we allow city staff to start the negotiation process and see how it goes, and then come back at a later date and see how those negotiations have gone and see what type of public participation might be necessary, and perhaps just as importantly, where would those dollars come from in the process? Okay.
Are we? I don't think we were done with the presentation yet, but are we?
The next part of the presentation, well, this is the recommendation, and I think we've all been through most of the points here about greater developer contribution, lower public participation. Omni has a great track record of being a private partner with a substantial balance sheet. The certainty of ownership and long-term commitment is important to us. It's been kind of one of the things that we've looked for in other transactions as well, and their experience and the entrepreneurial nature of their organization. With that, I'd like to invite Kenny Soodle from the Finance Department to kind of run through the menu of funding options, and then we can take it from there.
Okay.
Good morning, and I'll be quick. I just want to provide you this menu of funding options, and I'd like to say that this is something, the team came up with some viable options, but just up front, I'd like to say we'd be happy to, take into consideration anything that you all would like us to add to the list. Our goal today is to get, if you have any feedback or in the near future as well on any of these options. So what I'd like to do is just very briefly describe each of these options, and then the next slide will talk a little bit about the amounts. So we've divided these into three categories, sort of how the discussion we've had a little earlier about some of these are hotel generated. So we could TIF the property taxes, we could TIF the sales taxes generated by the hotel, and would point out that would just be the 2% portion. We don't touch the other dedicated taxes. We could TIF a portion of the hotel occupancy tax, the 2% that's dedicated to convention and tourism. We would leave the fairgrounds portion and the promotions portion alone. And then on the sales and hotel tax, both of those could also, if we make an application or approve, could possibly get state matching funds, so we could leverage that. And then the ground lease, even though it's a small amount, it's, again, something that we could use. It could be a point of negotiation. The second category is what we're calling, other existing sources. So these are sources that we have. We could use them. We don't have to change a policy or go to a vote or something like that. They exist today. So one of those was Kathy alluded to earlier, the Skirvin fund that some of the money we've collected in the past is going towards land acquisition, but going forward we receive a mortgage payment as well as a lease payment from that deal, and those are dollars that could be put into the deal. TIF number 2 has capacity that if you desired, we could use that as a funding source on this project as well. And then TIF 11, that's really just to say any other incremental revenues from that TIF district, which currently could be used. Currently, that's only the 499 building, and so there's a small portion there that could be used. And lastly, other potential sources. These are things that would require either a vote of the people or would require maybe a change in policy. So the first one of those are GOLD bonds. That's our economic development bonds that were authorized in 2007. There's a small amount that might potentially be available. In addition to the existing bonds, we could also potentially put something in the future vote. I believe our budget director mentioned, when we were talking about the capital plan earlier, was talking about an upcoming vote to authorize additional GO bonds, so that could be an option there. And then finally, you could do an increase to the citywide hotel occupancy tax or the rental car tax. So if you go to the next slide there. So I do want to say just quickly, we tried to put together some estimates here and give you a range. I want to stress that, these numbers are, to your point, Councilman, these are present value numbers, as if we had to monetize these or do a financing on these today. We've tried to be conservative. I've tried to look at this, Mayor, to your point about the risks. These numbers we try to be conservative, look at them, as if there needs to be a cushion on some of them that investors might require. But I do want to point out that, it's likely, as you were saying, some combination of these may need to be packaged up into one or more financings. All that's really subject to negotiations. Again, as we've talked about, do we need all the money up front? Do we need some of the money over time? But these numbers are all sort of under the assumption if we needed it all today. So again, we'd hope to get feedback and bring back a plan as part, with the redevelopment agreement, bring back a funding plan as well. And hopefully that would have more detail, talk about the risk. We've already begun working on different models, looking at different options, and But really, we just don't know yet till we get into the negotiations what that'll look like. To answer one question, you're asking about interest rates. You all often ask me as your debt manager about interest rates when we come to you with a GO bond or a refunding or some other deal. And I would just say on this one, it's really hard to say until we put together the final funding plan, because we don't know what the structure looks like. We don't know what the coverages look like. We don't know if there would be city backing on a bond deal or if it stands alone. Those are all topics that we'll explore and we'll hope to bring back to you in the funding plan.
Mayor, one of the things that this brings up an opportunity that we haven't had in the past on items that were somewhat controversial with regard to maps. This gives us an opportunity to go back to the people and ask them what they think. And I think the idea that it could partially be funded through an increase in the hotel motel tax or in a citywide car rental tax would give an opportunity for the public to weigh in on this. And I don't think that's a bad idea. I heard Tom McDaniel's comment that the parking garage was an intended consequence of what we're doing. Well, I was here when the baby was born, and it wasn't something that I intended. And I don't know what the rest of you thought, but it wasn't discussed at that time. So we're talking about spending money that wasn't contemplated publicly at the time MAPS was passed. This just would give us an opportunity for the citizens to weigh in and say, yeah, I think that's a good idea, you're on the right track, this is a good way to fund it, or say, no, we don't think it's a good idea. And I think it's an opportunity we shouldn't pass up. I'm going to vote to go forward with this, despite the fact I have some reservations about it, but I certainly think that we should not miss the opportunity to let the public have a voice in what we're doing here.
I have no problem with Jim and Kathy negotiating with Omni. The proposal that Omni had was better than I was actually expecting, and so this is not a insult to Omni. I certainly appreciate them wanting to come in and spend $150 million of their own money in Oklahoma City, but I don't think that what the negotiations are going to come up with are going to be something that I can vote for. And so what I think that we should do at this point is come up with similar to what Pete was saying, I think that this should probably be a MAPS 4 proposed project that gives the citizens an actual say in it, because this is along the same vein of past MAPS projects. The other option is just to go back and start value engineering, isn't that the phrase we always use, value engineering on it, and see if we can get the, I understand that the subsidy, we talked about the half of that $85 million could be funded by that, through the TIF on that property. I probably wouldn't have that much of a problem with it if that was the case, but I'm just not seeing $85 million add up here, and that's just too much for my palate. So I'm going to vote against it, but I really have no problems with negotiating. We're going to have some good negotiating. So,
Ed? I just want to echo what Pete and James are saying about allowing a vote of the people as to whether we go forward and how we go forward. I think that while it's true that the property tax, some of the TIF might not be there, but for the hotel, the interest that we're going to use to finance this wouldn't have to be paid but for this project. You borrow 3.5% over 20 years, $85 million, you're talking about another $33 million, right? It wouldn't have to be paid but for us doing this project. I continue to ask us to slow down and to maximize transparency and to maximize public participation in this very, very big project, which is going to be well over $100 million when you factor the subsidy, the interest, the land costs, and whatever you do with the park. To James's point, it's on par with other large MAPS projects. It's more than $100 million. You have experts like Haywood Sanders, who came here and spoke and predicted exactly what is happening now, who has written a book on convention center economics, who goes and speaks around the country and singles out Oklahoma City as the city with the lowest, with the most lack of transparency, and the way information about the project has been withheld from the people of Oklahoma City. When he goes and speaks around the country, all of us that are working on this, he singles out Oklahoma City as the city which has the least transparency and has gone the furthest to withhold information from the people of Oklahoma City. That, whatever we did with the Citizens Advisory Board last week, was shameful. We're better than that. The way it was brought on the $10 million for the parking garage with no previous warning, it's the same kind, it just fits in the same line with what Professor Sanders is telling the rest of the country about us. There's no reason that we had to just spring that on the Citizens Advisory Board last Thursday. This shouldn't have been a surprise. We knew that this was coming. I don't think that this is an opportunity, right? The Convention Sports and Leisure study 7 years ago said this is mandatory. It's not an opportunity. They said, if you want to do what you're promising the people during the MAPS 3 campaign, which is that you're going to create 700 jobs and triple the amount of convention center business that you have now, you must build a massively publicly subsidized hotel. You must increase your CVB budget significantly. You have to do those two things. It's not an opportunity. It's mandatory. We knew it then, and Pete's being nice, we willfully deceived the people of Oklahoma City, and we withheld that information from the people of Oklahoma City, which in my mind would have potentially derailed MAPS 3 and it would not have passed. You had no articles in the Oklahoman from Steve Lackmeyer in the 2 months before the vote, who started to ask these questions and then got shut down. This discussion was shut down. Then you had an Urban Land Institute study immediately after the vote that predicted exactly what's happening now. And then we had for 5 years the preposterous assertion, Larry, that we could potentially do this without a subsidy. There is nothing that would support that hope or desire that we could do this without a subsidy. When you say to the people of Oklahoma City, over 5 years, I hope to do this without a subsidy, that is deception. If I told you that I want you to invest in a mutual fund that has a 5,000% rate of return, I hope to get a 5,000. It's never happened, right? It's not ever going to happen. That's deception. To contend over the last 5 years that we could have done this without a subsidy is deception. It's a form of fraud, willful deception. And that's the situation we find ourselves in. And in that scenario, in that context, I think it's even more important that, Kathy, if you come up with a design, if the people are going to subsidize a third of this, they should have some say in what the building looks like, how it interfaces with the street, not some of the problems we had with the 499 Sheridan project. The public should have maximum input into that. The public should have finally an opportunity to say, we do or do not want to invest $100 million. If it's great, if the number is there, David, that you're talking about, the data, the return on investment, let's get all that number together and present it to the people and do what James is talking about and make that campaign and explain to the people why this is a great return on investment and this would be a great MAPS 4 project. And let the people vote on it. But they've been deprived of that. They've been deprived of the knowledge. We could have been preparing a funding source years ago. Because if you look at what's happening around the country, we knew this was coming. We knew this $85 million plus interest was coming. And we could have been preparing how we're going to pay for it years ago. Instead, what I'm asking is that the public get the maximum amount of time to look at this. That we don't negotiate with something with Omni, right? And like the Citizens Advisory Board shameful act last week, right? With Larry and Jim sitting in the audience staring down. It just feels wrong. It feels intimidating. When you guys come in the room, you're not speaking, right? You're not signed up to speak. I don't know what that adds to stare down the committee, put this $10 million in front of them without any warning. It feels deceptive. It feels bullying. It feels like Professor Sanders is just saying, a complete lack of transparency and going to unprecedented lengths to withhold information from the people. So I would ask that once you negotiate this, that the public get a lot of time to digest it, that you don't do something like have a meeting on Wednesday like we did last week and then bring this to council 5 days later. That if something's negotiated, we get to put it out to the public, let everybody digest it, have maximum public transparency, and then have the public participation that you're referencing.
Any other comments or questions? Kathy, philosophically, is this any different than what we did with the MAPS improvements in 1999 when we negotiated a deal ultimately with the Renaissance?
It's not very different.
Okay, and when we reopened the Skirvin Hotel after, over 25 years of it being shuttered, is it philosophically different than that public participation?
I don't think so, but, in fact, in the Skirvin's case, the city went out and bought the hotel.
Yeah.
And then went forward with the redevelopment, so took an even maybe more active role than we did, for example, with the Renaissance. But the Renaissance received significant subsidies from the city, both for their operations and for their capital expenditures. So we're not talking about subsidizing the operations of this, the Omni's taking the ongoing risk for the operations.
Well, I haven't seen them lately, if I've seen them before, but I would love to see the results of those two public participations in hotels.
We have
to
them
the
in my
extent
folder right
we've
here.
seen other cities' track record. Let's see our track record on paper somewhere along the line. Doesn't have to be today.
I'd like to see that too. I don't know about the Renaissance, but the Skirvin, to me, that's different because it's saving a historic building that was clearly going under and not going to be.
Well, we also took significant risk at that point when we went forward with it, and it's performed really well. We've come out really well in the black on that project.
And I would like to see those numbers as well.
Yeah, we have those, the Renaissance, the Skirvin, years ago, actually the Sheraton received some kind of assistance in its development because it was an urban renewal project. The Courtyard and 21C have all received assistance from the city. So one thing I would like to say as we're wrapping this up, we do have representatives from Omni here today. We have Mike Diedemeyer, who's the president of Omni, and his team that came here from Dallas this morning. So we're looking forward to negotiating with them and trying to bring something back to you that you find acceptable and that's a win-win for both sides.
Mayor, I just want to add one thing. My comments, the difference between the Sheridan and the Skirvin, and this is that first of all, there's one major difference as far as I'm concerned. I wasn't here either one of those deals. But the second major difference is that I don't know that there was ever a suggestion that sales tax and a vote of the people could have possibly have been included in the redo of either one of those. Now, they may have been, because I wasn't on the horseshoe when either one of those were done. But this one does provide, in the very list of alternatives, an option to go to the people and ask them what they think. That to me sets those two apart from this one.
Okay. Oh, we have a motion on the floor to empower staff to begin the negotiation stage with the concept that any achievement would come back to the council before the council has to sign off on it. I think there's been some great input here, and it's not that we're early in the process, but no idea is a bad idea today. We can continue to mull this over, and I suspect we're going to hear from the general public on the issue and as word filters out about the conversation. We have a motion and we have a second. Everybody ready to vote? All right, cast your votes, and it passes 7-2. Kathy, thank you, and to the people that came here from Dallas and elsewhere from Omni to witness the proceedings, thank you for your attendance today. All right, we're on item 9Q. Understand we do not need executive session on this item?
That's correct.
All right. Is there a motion to move 9Q forward? Cast your votes. Ed, your no light's still up. That's right. It passes unanimously. And item 9R, I understand we do need executive session. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a motion to move item 9R into executive session? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9S, understand we do need executive session.
Yes.
All right, cast your votes. That item moves to executive session. Item 9T is claims recommended for denial. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9T? All right, how about a motion? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 10 is claims recommended for approval. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under item 10? All right, how about a motion? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 11 is items from council. I think as many people in the room know, we have a couple of resolutions that have been proposing that the council help celebrate an Indigenous Peoples Day, and there are a couple of we have several people that have signed up to speak, and we hope to hear from all of them. I would ask them to keep their comments to 3 minutes or less, and we'd love to hear new information and new insights. So if you're merely agreeing with everyone else that's come before you, I'd prefer you kept your comments shorter rather than longer, but it's your 3 minutes. You can do with it as you like, just some advice from the council. Any comments from council before we start hearing from people? All right. Mary Ann Behard. And I'll ask people to give their name and address as they approach the microphone. All right. Reverend T. Sherry Dickerson.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi.
My name is Reverend T. Sherry Dickerson, 5309 Evanbrook Terrace, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73135. I will keep this brief. I have been here before. One of the things that has already been said this morning is that Oklahoma City and the state of Oklahoma, we are under scrutiny. We are being observed, and this is an opportunity for us to really get it right. I spoke with you before about my reasons for saying and being in support of Indigenous Peoples Day, so I will just continue to implore you to please go ahead and implement this, to go ahead and rescind Columbus Day. We don't want a separate day. It needs to be replaced with something that is indicative and shows and highlights some of the awesome points of our Native American and Indigenous people here in the state. Oklahoma. Oklahoma means land of the Native American. We have to. It is just necessary. It is the right thing to do. And I hope that you will understand how passionate all of us are here and are going to be supporting this effort. So we're going to keep coming and asking for you all to please implement Indigenous Peoples Day. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Sherry. Rena Guay. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Rena Gay. I live at 2346 Northwest 35th Street in Oklahoma City. And could I just get some clarification? Would I be speaking just on A here or both A and B?
Either one.
Either one or both?
Yeah,
okay. Because I wasn't sure. I filled out two cards, so I'll speak to both points at this time. So first of all, in terms of the suggestion that the city do an annual Indigenous Peoples Day at a different time in August, I would oppose that. I also wanted to say that I'm here representing two local organizations. One is the Center for Conscience and Action, which I'm a program director, and the other is Amnesty OKC, the local chapter of Amnesty International. So I'm just going to assume that this proposal is submitted with well-meaning intent and in the interest of compromise, but I would strongly oppose it. And basically it's unacceptable because primarily because it was not made in consultation with indigenous peoples or accepted by the indigenous community. So I would urge you to not accept this as a compromise and vote no. On the B resolution, speaking for myself and the organizations I mentioned, we support this very strongly, and we feel that there are many benefits to the city for this. The education of our history, our true and full history, is very important for current standing, but also in terms of young people coming forward in the future to not make some of the mistakes that have been made in the past. It's also, I think has been mentioned, that it would be good for tourist business, and if there were a parade, my organizations and many others are very interested in participating. And finally, there's a social benefit. The more citizens that are involved and invested in our city's well-being, and future is always good for a city and for building community and trust among each other and going forward together. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Jean Nicole Black.
Hello, my address is 2724 North Bryant Avenue. I live in Northeast Oklahoma City. I'm a graduate of Oklahoma City University. I ask that you abolish Columbus Day and replace it with Indigenous Peoples Day for the dignity of the Native children. When children are very young, they have innocent hearts. They cannot yet recognize the historical injustices that will affect their lives. The older children learn of these injustices and look to learn whether the actions of the past have been set right, or are they still being perpetuated. Are we protecting the innocence of the youth, or are we hardening their young hearts? The youth know whether they are being nurtured, respected, and honored at home and by the local community. Continuing Columbus Day in OKC dishonors our youth, and it sets a standard that their lives don't matter. As a parent, I can take care of the nurture, respect, honor at home, but I cannot protect them from what they encounter in their OKC community. The youth are our future. Please take this historical step in the right direction to show the Native youth dignity and hope that they can live in a city that no longer observes Columbus Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna Fassi.
Good morning. The correct pronunciation of my last name is Facci. My name is Anna Facci. I live at 511 Northwest 33rd Street here in Oklahoma City. I'm here to speak as a citizen, but also on behalf of my organization, the Council on American Islamic Relations Oklahoma. We represent a diverse population of Muslims in the state, including many Muslims who are indigenous. The reality is that we have to stand with our indigenous communities. As I was walking up this morning, I walked past a plaque that caught my attention just outside the Civic Hall Center. You might be familiar with it. It looks like this. On it, it says, "The Indian background is as much a part of our local heritage as it is to 200 years of our national life. Adopting the white man's culture in so many respects, our Indians have lost some of their own. But thankfully, they have retained a fierce pride in their own inheritance. They have enriched our professional, business, and cultural life." That's written in stone across the street from this very building. What the indigenous community is asking you, the city council, to do is to remove a holiday that celebrates an anti-indigenous mass murderer. and replace it with a day that celebrates exactly what that stone commits us to: respecting the people whose land we took to be here today. My family moved to this country in the 20th century, but that does not make me exempt from all of the things that came before. We have to acknowledge the pain and the uncomfortable words like oppression and decolonization in order to be able to move forward together in the spirit of healing. So as an Oklahoman, as the child of immigrants, as a representative of my community, the Muslim American community, of which there are, yes, indigenous American Muslims, I ask that you approve B resolution, which creates the Indigenous Peoples Day, replacing the day that would celebrate otherwise Christopher Columbus, and create a parade to celebrate this rich history of our country. Thank you.
Fatima Black.
Hi, my name is Fatima Black, and my address is 2724 North Bryant Avenue, 73121. And I'm in 8th grade, and I attend Kip Reach Charter Schools, and I play AAU basketball, and I wish to abolish Columbus Day because my life matters.
Kaya Black.
My name is Kaya Black, and I live 2724 North Bryant Avenue in Oklahoma City. Good morning. My name is Kaya Black, and I am a future surgeon. I'm attending Harding Charter Prep for my 9th grade year. My tribes are Shawnee Bannock, Cheyenne Arapaho, and Ka. I do not want to live in a city where Columbus Day is celebrated.
All right, thank you. Grace Franklin.
Good morning. My name is Grace Franklin, 4415 North Kelly. I'm coming as a representative for myself and also my organization, OKC Artists for Justice. We stand with the indigenous people in that we want to abolish Columbus Day and replace it with Indigenous Peoples Day. I know there's a pushback for traditionalists, per se, to move the holiday to a different date for Columbus Day. The problem with that is when tradition is wrapped in deceit and lies, you're defending something that is historically inaccurate, and it's also an attack on people's culture and Native and Indigenous people's lives. So we ask that this council go ahead and move to replace the holiday. Do not remove Columbus Day to another day. Go ahead and erase that and correct that part of history which should have never been written in that way in the first place. Economically, for the city, it would be beneficial. Also, on the world stage, Oklahoma City has been an example of many things and a model for many things in this country. And we should be a model in how to correct history and how to uplift people and culture who should have never been removed or attacked or massacred. So we really would like for the council to go ahead and abolish Columbus Day and replace that with Indigenous Peoples Day. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Grace. Taylor Sanchez.
Good
Good morning. My name is Taylor Sanchez. I live at 2200 Classen Boulevard. I am from Norman. I'm a student at OU. I'm here to speak today in solidarity with the indigenous peoples of Oklahoma as a fellow brown person of the Americas. I'm Chicana, and my family's father is from Mexico. Unfortunately, as my grandparents performed that sacred walk to to the U.S., my family's indigenous history and culture has been continually lost throughout the generations. I think that this is the reality for a lot of indigenous peoples, not just in Oklahoma, but in the Americas, living under colonization. And it is a constant threat. I want to urge the council to vote against the Stonecipher and Griner resolution to declare Indigenous Peoples Day as August 9th. And because it is significant and important to recognize Indigenous peoples on the second Monday of October. I think that this is an attempt to circumvent the significant demand by the Indigenous peoples of this city and this state, and preserve the legacy of Columbus and the conquistadores that have performed violence onto the bodies of the indigenous people and continually is perpetuated to this day by things like pipelines and police brutality. And I hope that you all will consider yourselves as the makers of history, not just as an attempt, consider yourself as the makers of history and think about the, power that the people of this city have, granted you, and stand on the right side. Thank you.
Thank you. Sydney Gray.
Henshe Estongo. My name is Sydney Gray, and I am a Muskogee Creek citizen. My address is 415 Chautauqua, Norman, Oklahoma 73069, and I'm here today to urge the Oklahoma City Council to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day on the second Monday of October henceforth. And I am also here to remind the Oklahoma City Council that they work for us as citizens. And if the decision is ruled against our favor today, the city will have not done its job and must be held accountable. And I would like to take the time to point out that James Griner and Mark Stonecipher's alternative resolution to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day in August is not an act of goodwill. It is disrespectful and a slap in the face to the Native people who have organized around the original resolution to recognize it on what is traditionally known as Columbus Day. Griner and Stonecipher's gesture demonstrates a complacency in celebrating indigenous genocide for generations to come, and their insistence on ignoring the needs of their constituents. And we have repeatedly requested recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day on this specific date. And if the resolution passes, Resolution B, the city will once again, and for the second year in a row, display its lack of regard for the voices of Indigenous peoples on Indigenous issues, thereby creating a racial divide on the lines of the community by refusing to act on the needs that they have expressed. I am one of the students who was successful in getting the University of Oklahoma Student Government Association to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day on the second Monday of October that last year. In this regards, OU is already head of the city. It is absolutely critical that Indigenous Peoples Day is recognized on the second Monday, October, and any other date is disrespectful and derailing. And I am not going to waste breath on explaining the significance of this date because clearly the council does understand. Instead, I would like to remind you of the tragic statistics that our youth and our children face in Indian country, especially here in Oklahoma. Our youth face the highest suicide rates more than any other youth group in the United States. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in our community, is at 2.5 times higher than the national average for other youth groups. The high school dropout rate for our youth is also double the national average, and we know that our youth are damaged by stereotypical mascot representations and nationwide celebrations of their own genocide on Columbus Day. Studies have proven these facts, but we as Native people know that the agony that our youth face is directly correlated with the celebrations of rape, murder, theft, and their own genocide. And this is just how crucial that this decision is. We have the highest population of indigenous, the second highest population of indigenous people here in here in Oklahoma, and where we have 39 federally recognized tribes, where, including my people, were marched here on the death march known as the Trail of Tears. Oklahoma is still known as Indian Territory, and so many of us are here. And we must also remember that the United States federal government since then has failed to recognize every single treaty that the United States has made with our people, and that this council has an opportunity to honor a very simple request that will very literally save the lives of our children and our youth. The city has the opportunity to lead by an example in our state on flipping the narrative and empowering our children and our youth, and to tell the truth about what happened in 1492 and beyond. So today I urge the city to vote on Resolution B and stand on the right side of history and vote against Griner and Stonecipher's resolution to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day on a random day. The city must do its job in serving the people, and if the city makes a decision that opposes our needs, and the city is already aware of the repercussions that they will face, and those responsible must be held accountable, in that we are organized as an Indigenous people and we have connections to our communities, and this decision will not go unnoticed. Thank you.
Johnny J.
Hi, my name is Johnny J. My address is 2309 Northwest 38th Street, Lawton, Oklahoma 73505. This is the second year that we have come before you, and we will continue to show up until our words no longer fall on deaf ears. Once again, I would like to stress that the UN World Indigenous Peoples Day is not synonymous with Indigenous Peoples Day, celebrated on the second Monday of October. It is not a substitute. It is not a compromise. Oklahoma City does not celebrate Columbus Day. The city will be losing nothing, and it will cost you nothing to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day in place of Columbus Day. As Native people and community organizers, we have put in the time and labor to mobilize our efforts and to gather community support, which we have. You know the cultural significance of recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day on the second Monday of October. You know the progress that it marks for us as human beings in not celebrating genocide. You have also been made aware of our coalition efforts in planning a parade for October 9, 2017, that has the support and participation of very diverse Native and non-Native organizations. So it is baffling that without consultation and without respect for our labor, a resolution is introduced to recognize August 9th, the UN's World Indigenous Peoples Day. But if you can recognize a non-Native created day of recognition, you can most certainly recognize the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day as well, standing in continued support and solidarity with Native communities in cities like Seattle, Berkeley, even McAllister and Anadarko, as well as other communities here in Oklahoma that are committed to positive change and growth. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sean. David Hill.
My name is David Hill. I'm Choctaw from Oklahoma. I live in Sasaque, Oklahoma, and I represent the American Indian Movement, which is a national, international organization. And we take up the problems of our people nationally and internationally. And Columbus Day has been an issue throughout the Americas and continues to be so, and a lot of cities throughout America have abolished Columbus Day. Albuquerque recently, Seattle, to name a few. And to celebrate Columbus is to hold up him as a hero who started slavery in America. He started sex trafficking in America. He started exploitation and torture in America. And even the black people should be against Columbus Day, because out of Columbus came slavery. And there's not much I can add to. These people have spoken really well about these issues. But who our heroes are and who we celebrate defines our value system. And if you want to continue to celebrate Columbus Day, then we can see what your value system is. You want to maintain racism. You want to maintain wage slavery and a lot of the other negative things that face our people and your people, the poor, the oppressed, people of color. And, you know, you have violence that's taking place across America. Well, someone once said, violence is a barometer of oppression. And oppression starts with children and carries on through adulthood. And we as a people, doesn't matter what color you are, we need to remove anybody that's held up as a hero because they were oppressive people. If we were going to celebrate Timothy McVeigh Day, you would understand. Or if we wanted to celebrate Hitler Day, you would understand. You know, or somebody wanted to celebrate James Earl Ray Day. You know, the black people would understand. You know, and you as a people need to quit holding up some racist murderer as a hero and celebrating him. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dave. Christina Owen.
Christina Owen, 201 South Flood, Norman, Oklahoma, 73069. Basically, I'm here standing in support along with a lot of the Native voices that you hear here today. I think that we've heard a lot of very valid issues, so I won't reiterate on any of that. He did mention briefly just now if we had a Hitler Day, that wouldn't be something that we're celebrating. I do have German family, and I can tell you for a fact that they're not spending their time right now trying to fight to get rid of something like that in order to erase a part of their history. I think a lot of times when we think of Columbus Day, our children are being taught basically a fairy tale. It's not something that's based in history as far as what we're celebrating and what our children are learning. So I think it is important not necessarily to erase the past, but a celebration is not what we need. We need to have an actual honest conversation about the history and not make it something that we are celebrating. Because for many people here, that is not a celebration. It is a mark of a genocide. It is a mark in our history that is not something to be happy about. It is something to be learned from, but not something to celebrate by any means. Now, I'm from Norman, and I came up here today because Oklahoma City is important. The decisions that you guys make are important. This is the capital of our state. And if you make a decision, it will be in the news. It'll be something that other towns look to. So if you are able to start to turn that tide, other cities will follow in your lead. So not only are you leaders of Oklahoma City and of your constituents, you are also leaders of the state. And I know for a fact that many other people are watching. Many other people will be reading these news articles, and many other people are making these considerations as well. So for not only your city, but for the state of Oklahoma, I would really hope that you would consider abolishing Columbus Day and replacing it with Indigenous Peoples Day. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Christine. Amanda Anderson.
Halito, Amanda Anderson, 4800 South Foster Road, number 219, Oklahoma City, 73129. I would like to address, first of all, the Resolution A that is proposed by Mark Stonecipher and James Greiner. The choice of August 9th, I understand the logic of, because of the UN's World Indigenous People Day. However, that day is actually merely in conjunction with the International Indigenous Peoples Decade, which ended in 2014. Therefore, it's only an arbitrary day. It's just something completely at random. It has no significance. When we came to the last meeting on the 13th, every single person who spoke in support of choosing the second Monday of October for a celebration of Indigenous Peoples Day in this city. Because of that, it is important that that is the resolution that is chosen, not the first resolution that has been proposed. I'm not going to repeat things that everybody else has already said about the atrocities. You are all very aware of that. But please,
make sure that you're choosing the right resolution. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Tammy Adams.
Good morning. My name is Tammy Adams. I live at 10709 Northwest 40th Street in Yukon, Oklahoma. I live in Ward 1. I'm Choctaw. I was born and raised here in Oklahoma City. I was very disappointed that the resolution wasn't passed last year. I was beyond surprised. As so many other cities in Oklahoma have recognized and embraced Indigenous Peoples Day, I can't understand why our capital city doesn't recognize it. There's so many people have spoken much more eloquent than me, and they've said everything that's in my heart too. I just ask that you will recognize this, that we come to you with our open hearts, and we ask that you open your heart and your mind to our issues and show us the respect that Indigenous people deserve in this state and in this city. I think I was also very disappointed to hear about the second resolution, and I think something that I really can't stress enough is that the people of Live Indigenous, okay, we're not consulted in this. We deserve a place at the table. We should be consulted in these things. I think that is the most simple form of respect. I'm a voter. I raised my children here in Oklahoma City. I was educated here in Oklahoma City. And I love this city. And I want to show everyone how proud I am of it. And it is difficult for me whenever my people are not shown that same respect. When it comes voting time, I'm a campaigner and I'm a voter. And I know many people who are interested in these issues and who are also voters and people who remember what goes on here. Thank you for your time.
Thanks,
I hope that you will all vote in favor of the second Monday in October for Indigenous Peoples Day.
Debbie Hogue Downing. Debbie Hogue Downing. Morning.
Debbie Hogue Downing, 5936 North Sapulpa, Oklahoma City. I'm a member of the Choctaw Nation. Thank you for this privilege to speak this morning. I spoke last time also. The eyes of the United States have been on Oklahoma in the past days. My heart aches for what's happened there. For us as Indigenous people on Columbus Day, our heart aches. When one group sees injustice, we all see injustice. So it's time that you as a city council see the injustice of what's happened. Let's look at the Indigenous People Day for October, because that's important to us. That's what we brought to you last year, and we continue to bring that to you again this year. And let's tell the rest of the story. You all have had information about it. Now let's tell the rest of Oklahoma City the rest of the story and have this parade, have information about Indigenous people this year. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Okay. That concludes the citizen participation. I did want to mention one thing. I read both resolutions, and I think here in a few minutes we're either going to have 0, 1, or 2 Indigenous Peoples Days. One of those results is probably going to be the outcome. But it says on here that we encourage and support a parade. I do think we need to at least verbally message that parades are a separate process. I mean, you can have a parade without any sort of designation on a day. or just because you have a day doesn't mean you can have a parade. You know, it depends on a lot of factors. You know, what streets are you going to use? How long are they going to be tied up? What day of the week is it? And there's a separate process for that that's completely separate from what we're voting on today. So I didn't want to get that confused because several of you had brought up. And I guess the other thing is we don't do parades. The city of Oklahoma City does not do parades. We allow other people to do parades. And a lot of well-meaning parades take place in Oklahoma City. The other thing that has been brought up, and I think some of you already know this, so if you've already heard this, then I hate to repeat myself, but the city of Oklahoma City does not acknowledge Columbus Day right now. We have no record of Columbus Day inside any of our city ordinances. It's not a holiday in the city of Oklahoma City. It is a federal holiday, and I think that's part of the confusion, is that somehow there's this assumption that Oklahoma City celebrates Columbus Day when in fact we don't recognize it at all. And as far as I know, we never have. With that, I'll kind of allow the council to talk. And the first one is item A. So James and Mark, do you all want to speak?
Yeah, I mean, over this last year and this year, I mean, I know for me personally, I'm not against having an Indigenous Peoples Day. I just haven't ever. I know Mark has mentioned numerous times, what about August 9th? That's when the UN celebrates Indigenous Peoples Day. They've already designated, and I agree, it is probably just an arbitrary day. But neither one of these resolutions, like the mayor kind of hinted at, is getting rid of Columbus Day. That's a federal holiday. So to me, if we have it on the second Tuesday in October, then all that's doing is actually causing conflict. It's saying that instead of being inclusive. And so for me, the August 9th date, or any other arbitrary date we want to come up with, is more inclusive than having it on the second Tuesday in October. And for me, I don't view our role on the council as putting Christopher Columbus on trial, addressing really his legacy at all. We haven't created a Columbus Day, and so that's definitely you need to talk to your congressmen and senators about that too, if you really want to change that, because they're the ones that created it, or that entity created it. So that was my intent on August 9th, because I'm absolutely not against Indigenous people having an Indigenous Peoples Day in Oklahoma City.
Okay, Mark?
After the last council meeting, James walked out and he walked up to me and he mentioned, what about having a resolution to have this on August 9th? And I said that was a great idea, I thought. It was a compromise. And that's why I was elected to office, was to work with other people and to compromise and to come up with solutions that make everybody, maybe not completely happy, but work together and continue to move together in the right direction. I see this country as so polarized right now on so many different levels that I want it to stop, and I want us to unite. And in this instance, I firmly believe that to celebrate this on the second Monday is a divisive move. It's a move that will offend large groups of people. There are 26 million Italian Americans in the United States. They like to celebrate on the second Monday in October, Columbus Day. It's their Italian heritage. If you look, for example, at the parade in New York, there are numerous parades all over the East and in the Midwest and in the West celebrating Columbus Day. But if you just look at the New York parade, there's 35,000 people that attend that parade. Past Grand Marshals have included Mario Cuomo, Rudolph Giuliano, Joe DiMaggio, Tommy Lasorda, the Honorable George Pataki, and Justice Antonio Scalia. So I can't support something that is divisive. I can't support something that is going to offend another group. And that's why I thought James' idea was a great compromise and a good idea. The one thing I would say, and I think it's really important for us all to remember, I called a history professor, and I talked to this person about this and the importance of the new discovery in 1492. But the one thing that came out from that conversation was we have to remember the atrocities. We have to teach our children about atrocities, mass atrocities. And in doing some research on this, I came across the name of Raphael Lemkin. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of him, but he was a famous, well-known Polish lawyer, Jewish. And in 1943, while he was studying the Armenian genocide, which some would say was the first Holocaust, he coined the word genocide. Because in Greek, genos means tribe, family, or race, and in Latin, cide means to kill. And so the term was created. And my point here on all of this is I want people to remember and to teach our young children about things that are done wrong, and to make a difference in their lives and explain to them that something like this will not happen again. It's deeply passionate to me in the fact that my grandfather was Armenian. My grandfather fled Armenia in 1915 when 1.5 million Armenians were killed just for being Christians. And he made it here safely, and that's why I'm here today. And so I want to fight against something that's divisive. I want to do something that's a compromise, and that's why I support James's Plan A and my plan.
Okay. Any other comments from council?
I guess, Mayor, if I could just make a couple of comments. I've been reading a lot recently about paradox. And the one thing we know is that history is full of paradox, and that is part of what we're dealing with today. Somebody in the audience mentioned they wanted to have the true and full position brought forward, where there is no true and full position, or it's very, very hard to find exactly what that might be. I think it's clear from our speakers today that really the only objective here is to eliminate Columbus Day. It is not necessarily to find a compromise where we can celebrate all of the important contributions of the Native American community. You all have been here several times. I have been here several times, and I've said that I believe that Red Earth Day would be the appropriate day. That is a Native-created opportunity already in our community where we have a parade, we have a celebration of food, we have a celebration of art, we have a recognition of the 39 recognized tribes in this state, and it is a very important opportunity, I think, to bring people together. I would agree. I wrote down some other comments. I agree with James and the mayor. We do not celebrate Columbus Day in Oklahoma City, and I would strongly recommend that you petition the federal delegation. If that's a change that we want to make in a federal holiday, let's take it to the federal level. In Oklahoma City, we greatly appreciate the contributions of the Native American population. We have a place to celebrate it, and let's embrace that opportunity and celebrate it on the opening day of Red Earth Day, and that's my perspective.
Okay. Other comments from council on item 11A? Yeah.
Mayor, I said everything I have to say about it a year ago. I mean, I still feel the same way I did then. I think it's time to do it. I do think it's the idea of doing it in some other day without conversation with indigenous people is borders on insulting. And these two people on the end are my friends. I don't want to make it any worse than being on the other side from them. But I just think it's time we do it. It's we're not changing a day. I think perhaps a little too much emphasis was put on Columbus because we don't celebrate Columbus Day. But I do think if that's what the Native people in Oklahoma or across the country want, I think that's a day that ought to be done easily in Oklahoma City. We're not replacing something. We're just honoring people that make up a huge part of our population and at least half of our heritage, if not more. And I just think it's time to do it.
Okay. Larry?
Last year, I made my position, I think, very clear. I was of the opinion last year that we should honor our indigenous people, especially our Native American friends, by encompassing honoring them with Red Earth and also with moving forward the Indian Cultural Center, which is a mechanism to promote harmony and to promote the perpetuation of their history. This year, I had a chance to visit with a very well-known, I'm not going to use his name, a member of the Native American community, and I broached that idea, and he said, man, that is a great idea. You need to go and talk to, and I'm not going to mention his name, but the most influential person in the Native American community in this state. I have not had a time to do that. I am in favor of that. I was thinking, walking in here today, that I would support Mark and James's what I'd call a compromise, but based on what I've heard back here, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to vote against that, as I'm also going to vote against the Indigenous Day, the second Monday in October. Thank you, Your Honor.
Ed, and then David.
I have had the opportunity to speak with members of the organization. I went to Sarah Adams Cornell's home and spoke with some board members. And what I heard then, what I hear today is the pain from the community. And some of the statistics in the community were cited. That's what I hear. That's what I hope the rest of the council hears. In this time, which is clearly polarized, and this is the low-hanging fruit. This is a win-win. This is easy for the council to do. It goes a long way towards healing. What I heard in the pain is, and it was clear in meeting with the board that they didn't want this to just be another trial, putting on the evidence about Columbus that was done last year. And I hope everybody notices that really wasn't brought up this year. We didn't focus on that. It's about a parade. It's about a day, about having Oklahoma City be the epicenter of that parade, having people come from all over the state, and ideally from outside the state. And the group has gotten commitments from many, many organizations across the state and even outside the state, and talking to some of the most influential people in the state who support this idea. And I think there's momentum for that. And I think the signal here, I think they understand absolutely that it's a separate process for the parades. You have to apply for street closures and all that kind of things. But it's just the council saying we support the intent of having a parade, I think goes a long way towards getting those commitments from people throughout the state and outside the state to descend upon Oklahoma City on the second Monday of October. This is a movement. It's inevitable. I think we can either take this step today or inevitably it's going to happen. It's every major university in Oklahoma has done this already, right? Every major university in Oklahoma has done this already. Cities throughout the country are doing it. It's not in August. It's the second Monday. There are reasons why that would facilitate. I agree Oklahoma City doesn't celebrate Columbus Day, but there is a Columbus Day, which is a federal holiday, so a lot of people are off work. Banks are off work, federal employees are off work, so those that wanted to participate in a parade that day would facilitate a parade and a congregation. I think I also want to point out that I think that it goes beyond Columbus. Kind of an interesting dynamic is where this conversation leads if you start to look at the actions of Columbus, which I won't go into. But somebody mentioned fairy tale, which I think is an accurate description. I mean, and it feels good to a lot of people, the story of Columbus, which to me, the way it's portrayed and the way it's been portrayed is a fairy tale. Now, there is a history in Oklahoma which has some of the same kind of fairy tale aspects. This idea that nobody was here, we had a land run, we had the pioneering spirit of Caucasian Oklahomans, and that's and then that's how Oklahoma City and Oklahoma came to be. Not that there was this final solution, but Oklahoma and Oklahoma City is actually kind of we were the integral piece to the federal government's final solution, the ethnic cleansing that happened in this country that drove all these tribes to Oklahoma. And that pain was expressed here, and you can see that's on the surface. So I think that it goes beyond just Columbus and what happened in 1492. It's the entire situation, the entire history, and the history in Oklahoma's history. None of us participated in that ethnic cleansing, but it's a very real part of our history, and we can embrace that and discuss it openly and let the healing and the pain, which is evident, begin to heal. And it's just such low-hanging fruit. It's so easy. There is no one here asking that it not be on the second Monday of October. Not last year, not today. I don't know if you guys have gotten any emails. I haven't. No one is asking that we not do this. But lots of people clearly are interested in doing it, just as every major university in Oklahoma has done, just as other large cities in Oklahoma have done, and cities throughout America have done. Either do it the second Monday in October or don't do it at all. I think without consulting, and I understand the intent, which was to compromise, and I think that's laudable. But I think there needs to be consultation with those who are asking for it, and I think it's demeaning and not a good idea to do it in August. We're going to just come right back next year. And it will be brought back every year until I think the inevitable happens, which these are dominoes that are falling. They're going to fall everywhere. And it will happen here. If it's this year or in future years, that's okay. But I hope that the council hears the pain, tries to facilitate the healing. And I think that's inclusive, Mark. And I think that they've tried to compromise and not focus on Columbus, but focus on the healing and what good could come out of a congregation here in Oklahoma City on the second Monday of October. Thanks.
All right. David? Thank you, Your Honor. Excuse me. I didn't plan on this ending at that time. But, you know, when I first heard about this effort over a year ago, I was really drawn to the effort because I thought it would be a great opportunity to showcase the achievements and some great examples of American Indians who've been a tremendous asset to this country. And so last year I voted for it, and again, as I said, I was initially drawn to it, but even during last year's presentation and even today, I know this year's presentations has not been as focused on the atrocities that were performed on the American Indians. But it still has a sense of negativism if we focus on Columbus Day. And I don't think we need to go back 500 years to find examples of injustices that have occurred. Unfortunately, today, there are still many examples of man's inhumanity to fellow man in the form of human trafficking, domestic abuse, the wars that are going on in certain parts of the country. We currently live in a challenging time. So instead of trying to continue or perpetuate a negative or a almost divisive perspective, I would be more inclined to focus on trying to find individuals, American Indian individuals, that we could focus on their lives and achievements and celebrate their lives. You know, we could start with like Sequoyah, a great educator, and all the accomplishments he was able to bring not only to Native Americans or American Indians, but to all of Americans. We could look at the life of Jim Thorpe, a great athlete, and he was a part of the effort to assimilate American Indian children into the white culture and the problems that created. This book, The Real All-Americans, does a tremendous job of telling the history of the United States during this time period and the efforts to attempt to assimilate American Indians into the white culture. Big mistake. He overcame that and was able to achieve great success as an athlete. And then finally, we could look at someone like Allen Hauser, my favorite artist, not my favorite American Indian artist, but my favorite artist, the first Cherokee Apache born into freedom in 1915. Up until that time, that whole tribe, that whole nation was in prison down in Fort Sill, and the crime they committed were being a member of the Apache Nation. And yet, he overcame those difficulties and became a great artist, a great spokesperson for American Indians. Those are just 3 examples. There's numerous examples that we could showcase and have resolutions to focus on the contributions of American Indians throughout the year, and that's what I would encourage us to consider. And I know we could work with this group to help identify those various days throughout the year, not limit it to one day, but to have as many as we could find, and use it again to focus on individuals, American Indians, who encountered the same challenges and many more challenges than what we may ever encounter, and overcame those, made great achievements in their lives, and contributed to the well-being of all of us here in the United States. Thank you.
I like that idea.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do want to thank you all for coming out and continuing the push for this day. But however, the comments that has been geared towards Councilman Greiner and Councilman Stonecipher, I'm going to tell you I don't agree with. You can agree on the issue without the personal attacks. So I want to be very clear on that. You know, you can agree to disagree without the personal attacks. And so I'm just going to let you know that. Again, I do want to thank you all for continuing to push for this day. Columbus, yes, he was a bad man. And I think the argument is a federal issue. I think the federal government is the branch of government that needs to deal with this whole Columbus Day. Because the problem is the community has a problem with Columbus Day. And so I do believe it has to be fought on a national, federal level. And you have my assistance there. I do support that. But don't come down here and disrespect my colleagues. You can agree to disagree. And so that's what I have to say on that. My colleagues, they did try to come up with a compromise. I understand the community. They don't agree with it. You don't agree with it. But at least they tried. But don't come down in with the personal attacks. Thank you.
All right.
Mayor, I have one more comment. You know, the Oklahoma City Board of Education showed some courage in removing the name Redskins from Capitol Hill High School. As a young person, that was always going to be the mascot, whatever name of that school. It took a lot of courage to do that. And I think we ought to step up and show the same courage today.
All right. Sarah. Motion on item 11A.
So moved.
For a second? All right. We're voting on item 11A, August 9th. All right, cast your votes. The item fails 3-6. Is there a motion on item 11B? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on the second resolution. The motion fails by that same 3-6. All right. Do you want to have executive session and come back and do the city manager reports? Let's do that.
We have a couple other citizens to be heard.
We'll come back and do that. Council is back in session, and we're under items from council. James, you have anything else? Ed?
Nothing other than I just learned from the group that Boston just passed Indigenous Peoples Day. Their mayor is Italian American and was fully in support of switching it to Indigenous Peoples Day. And John, I just want you to know they really, I don't think were meant to offend anyone. And Mark and James, I want you to know. I mean, they really wanted for it to be peaceful, and so I don't think they just want that to be known. But Boston just passed it, and it'll come here eventually. Thanks.
All right, Larry? All right, John?
I want to encourage our listeners and watchers to please come out to the Ward 7 Town Hall on public safety. Tonight at the St. John Missionary Baptist Church, we will begin at 6:30 p.m. in the St. John Baptist Church. Is located 5700 North Kelly Avenue. We will have as guests Oklahoma City Police Chief Bill City, and as well as John George, the president of FOP. So we will be addressing again public safety issues in Ward 7, but throughout Oklahoma City. Thank you.
All right. Mark?
I just wanted to tell David Greenwell I appreciated his comments. I thought they were very insightful. I thought that was a good idea. That's something that we should consider, and that we should work with the Native Americans, sit down and meet with them, and continue to try to come up with positive solutions.
All right. David, did you have anything?
Just quickly, Mayor, I missed the last City Council meeting because I was able to attend the National Public Transportation Association annual meeting, and our own Embark received the Best Public Transportation System Award for a particular size. And I just wanted to emphasize, if it hasn't already been emphasized at the City Council level, and perhaps we could have Jason or somebody from Embark come and talk about the award. But it was an extremely important award among that American Public Transportation Association. You would not believe how many compliments we got from the various municipalities and districts throughout the United States for winning that award. It's a 3-year process. They look back at the achievements and successes that a system has obtained during the past 3 years, see what direction it's moving towards, and it's a very challenging award to achieve, and I just want to congratulate everybody associated with Embark. And it goes back many years, all the efforts that we're now getting to recognize didn't just happen overnight. It's been many years with support from the city, as well as great efforts by the leadership within Embark and its own trustees. So just wanted to mention that. And Mark, I would be pleased to work on any kind of idea to help identify, say, a resolution on those various days. And we could do a variety of things. You know how they said, let's have a parade? Well, we could have, a day focusing on education when we were looking at Sequoia, for example. We could have a day focus on athletic events when we focus on Jim Thorpe, Alan Hauser. We could have a day focused on arts, and I'm sure the various art associations and organizations would want to participate in that, as well as the whole community. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah. Meg?
Mayor, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get out of line. Just a couple of things. We don't often get letters thanking people, and I just want to pass along a compliment. This came to me from John McMillan, and he said, I'd like you to pass on a compliment. I want to thank the City of Oklahoma City Streets Department for patching of McKinley between Southwest 44th and Southwest 36, a job needing done for a number of years. So thank you, Mr. McMillan, for complimenting our staff, and I just wanted to pass it on in public. A couple of congratulations. Heritage Hills had a wildly successful house tour this weekend, and it takes so many volunteers to pull that off. I really appreciate it all. The Plaza District celebrated the Plaza District Festival on Friday, and there were thousands and thousands of people there all day. The mural project was tremendously successful. And Ava Scaramucci this weekend celebrated 25 years of her painted door retail location. It's now in Bricktown, but she started out on Southwest 70th or so. And, you know, it's really hard to run a business for 25 years, and it's really hard to run a retail business for 25 years. So I want to congratulate her for that. And it would be, I think, impossible for me to turn off my mic without saying how disappointed I am at the incredible uncomfortableness of this council meeting today. I really don't think I've ever sat on this council where colleagues have been so inappropriate with each other, and I'm really hurt by it. It's been directed at me in the past, and I haven't said anything, but when it's directed at my colleagues, I find it so disappointing. We're a great city, and we've been a great city because of how we all work together, and I'm really disappointed.
All right. Yeah. Pete? Do you have anything? All right. City manager reports.
Mike Carrier is here this morning talking about CVB.
Okay.
Mike?
Mr. Mayor, Council, good to see you all again. It is time for us to come to you and present our annual report for last fiscal year. The challenge of getting this actually on your schedule is the reason that we're a little bit late, but between our schedule of things going on and your all's schedule of meetings, moved it a little bit later, but we're pleased to be here. Fiscal 2016 was a very good year for us. We continued to have significant success in all areas of the operation and continued to see good things happening as we move forward into 2017. In our convention sales area, our sales lead and room nights, we achieved our goal. In fact, we exceeded our goal by 26%. A lot of people really interested, and I'll talk more about that after we go through the presentation. Our next one is future room nights, 11% ahead of our goal in terms of actual bookings. These are groups that have committed and signed contracts to come to Oklahoma City somewhere either in fiscal 16 or over the next couple of years. A lot of these are in the downtown area, but they are literally all over the city using facilities in a variety of different ways. So, again, good business for the city as we move forward. Group service. You know, once we book a group, we don't just pass them off to someone else and say, thanks, we'll see you later. We have people on our staff that continue to work with them to make sure that we know what they are expecting when they come to town and that we can meet the needs they have, that we can assist them if they need transportation to move a group from their hotel to the Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum or anything else that they might need. We try to be a central repository for at least the information so that we can put them in contact with the right people to accomplish what they want, or we can assist them in getting it. We service 275 groups this year. I've got 2 people that do that. So that's a whole lot of work that 2 people are doing to make these groups feel good about actually coming to Oklahoma City, and again, exceeded the goal that we had had and the numbers we had seen in the past 2 or 3 years. In our tourism side of the house, this is leisure tourists. It's challenging to quantify this. And the challenge comes in that the only real area we are able to identify is motor coach traffic. But once again, we exceeded the goal in terms of the groups hosted. These are groups coming from different places around the United States, and in last year's case, even internationally. Fly drive tours that take place. So we are seeing more and more groups. There are people that talk about this being a dying market, and it is not. It is a maturing market by all means. As our population matures and ages, there are a lot more people that are interested in traveling in this manner. And this brings to mind one of the things that we're looking forward to, and without going into any big spiel about it, the American Indian Cultural Center continues to be something that we look forward to, and we appreciate the city's work in getting that resolved favorably so that we have another great attraction to share
with the United States, along with the other attractions we have. The Matisse exhibit, which was here, was a tremendous success. And I will only say that and let Michael Whittington send you some information about the actual results. But we were all extremely pleased, and those are the kinds of things these folks come looking for. In terms of passengers, 16% more passengers than we would have anticipated. And so, again, things like the Matisse and other activities going on certainly contribute to this. In terms of the room nights generated by this, a very nice increase in the number of room nights. It reflects the fact that more of these groups are staying a couple of nights in Oklahoma City instead of just one night or just passing through. And so we continue to build on this as we have more opportunities and more blockbuster type events such as Matisse. And so very pleased with what we're seeing here and continue to see great interest in that. In our equine events, in fiscal 16, we still maintain the same number of events. The one new event we had is in this new fiscal year, but again, almost over $193 million in direct spending impact that we can track. A great year for our equine shows. We are seeing increases in the participation in those shows. The equine industry is sort of a lagging industry in terms of catching up after a down cycle. That's because many of the horses that are involved in these are 3-year-olds, so you have to go through that breeding and training cycle to get them to many of the national championships, international championships that we host here. But we are seeing increases in those and looking forward to even more of that as we go into this year. Our marketing and communications. Our website, we just barely met our goal this year, but a large part of that is the ever-changing algorithms that folks in the internet industry keep throwing on the table, changing how people are able to sort and find you. So one day, actually, it came out last year that Google was changing their algorithms as much as 3 times a day. It makes it extremely hard to stay on top of, but we work very diligently to do that. We still get very good traffic and continue to do more. Stories that we pitch. These are ideas we send to travel journalists, whether they are bloggers, whether they are writers for publications like the New York Times or National Geographic or Southern Living or any other printed publication. Last year we pitched 87 different story ideas to these folks, and 48 of them actually were the goals that we had. 87 of them actually got produced. So, a very nice return, and a lot of these are some of those human interest things that kind of set Oklahoma City apart from other cities. It's great to talk about the new development, but let's talk about some of the human interest and some of the people behind that. So we continue to see great progress there. Overall, the CVB, hotel motel tax collections, up until the last about 6 weeks of the year, we were actually ahead of the previous year. We wound up $7,000 below the previous year. 1/2 or 0.05% decrease, which in a year like we had last year, we consider that to be a victory that we were in fact flat in terms of our generation of tax. I know this year we have seen some decreases, but we are still ahead of the budget that we had projected for the year. And now that we are entering the fall season with the horse shows coming in, some of the other things that are going on, we feel very good about the direction that we are headed. So in terms of formal report, that's pretty much it. I want to advise you a couple of things that we are doing as we move forward. One thing that is happening and will be happening in the next couple of months, it is normal for CVBs around the country to establish what are known as client advisory boards. This is an opportunity for us to have a group of 10 to 15 meeting planners from around the country. There will be a couple from here in Oklahoma City. and the state of Oklahoma, but there will be meeting planners from around the country, some of them that have met here in Oklahoma City, some of them that have never been here before. And these folks have agreed to be a part of this group for 3 years. They'll meet here twice a year for 3 years and talk about what they see here. They'll be watching our progress. These are people that can potentially use the new convention center. They're people that can influence other potential users of the convention center. And so they will be here in November. It will be a facilitated meeting. We're bringing in a facilitator that has a great background in the meetings and conventions industry, was a meeting planner herself. And so we'll be showing those folks what's going on here, some of the plans we have, the plans for the new convention center. They'll see the new Bennett Exposition Center at the fairgrounds. They'll see what's going on in terms of hotel development around the community, the streetcar, the park, all of the other activity that's happening. And it'll be a great opportunity for them to talk to us about what else is needed. Talk to us about how these things will impact their potential use of Oklahoma City and the expectations that their delegates have. We think it's great to be able to do this before the plans for the convention center are finalized, because it will allow us, with Populous, to tweak those. Not to make radical changes, we don't believe, but to tweak them. And I say not radical changes because there's been a lot of input from folks of this nature directly to Populous or through us or through other situations to our architects. So we feel very good about the direction we're headed. But these folks will be kind of on the cutting edge of this minor change that you might make, or some of the public spaces, things you could potentially do there. So we're looking forward to having them in November. The other thing, and this relates to the convention center also, and also, well, frankly, to the Bennett Center. We'll be attending, for the first time ever, IMEX. It is one of the largest convention planner trade shows in the world. There will be some 3,000 international and domestic meeting planners in Las Vegas for 4 days. That will be in October. And one of the things we will be doing is showing these folks the plans at that point for the new convention center. We'll show them floor plans, give them an opportunity to look and see. It's exciting to us because this is a schedule show. It's not a shotgun approach of we're standing in our booth hoping somebody stops by. These people make appointments to come and see us. As of right now, we have 11 appointments that are 30 minutes long each with individuals. But more importantly, we have scheduled 6 shows in our booth where we will actually unveil the plans to a group of planners each at a time. There are 4 planners in each group. We limit it to 4 because it's not a big area. We want to make sure that the people that are there can actually see and can talk to us about what we are showing them. So far, we've got 22 planners that have signed up to come see that. Now, that's 22 people, and these are not people we've invited. This was broadcast on their open site. Here's what's going on. So these are people that are interested in looking to see what's coming up in Oklahoma City. So, we're excited about this opportunity. We think it's a great way to begin the introduction of the new convention center. And we look forward to the results from that, and then the results from the Client Advisory Board, and moving forward with the unveiling far and wide, and begin the whole deal about presenting the convention center and beginning to book business, hopefully early next year. So you all have seen this before. This is the next issue of our video direct mail piece that we send out. This one features Rick Adams from the USOC, Keith Burden, who is from Oklahoma and is the executive director of the Southern Baptist Convention, the National Association of Free Will Baptists, I'm sorry, and John Long from Legal Shield, which is headquartered in Ada, talking about the virtues of Oklahoma City as a meeting destination, and has also been sent to some 400 meeting planners around the country with their video testimonials in it about how great Oklahoma City is and what's coming up here. So thank you all for your continued support. We look forward to moving through, continuing to move through 2017 and make some good things continue to happen. So thank you. Happy to answer questions.
All right, any questions for Mike? Yeah, Ed.
Two, on the convention center hotel financing options, one idea was to take the hotel motel tax derived from the hotel and divert it away from the CVB back to the hotel project. The Convention Sports and Leisure study 7 years ago said your CVB budget is not big enough to compete at the higher tier. You're building a convention center hotel on this larger convention center, your CVB budget's not big enough. So what impact, if any, do you think diverting that money away from the CVB budget would have?
Let me simply say it this way. We know that we need more dollars to be able to do this, but the ideas that you all saw today are simply that, ideas. We will be discussing, and have already been discussing with the city, how to accomplish a number of things that need to be done. Are there options to a hotel tax increase for the CVB? Are there ways to increase hotel tax that the CVB participates in it as well as the hotel? Just like the financing options, nothing's done. One of the things that I have enjoyed in the 9 years I've been here is that we've been able to have some good discussions with the city about a variety of different things, and we don't always agree on them, but we talk about them. And over the course of time, we seem to find ways that there's a whole lot more win-wins than win-losses. So I appreciate Mr. Couch and Kathy and other folks in the city working with us, because they understand that that we're going to have more to sell, and it's going to cost more to do that. So, we just got to find the right solution, and they didn't come to you today with a done deal situation, because this whole thing is a process. So
let me ask you about another option was increasing the hotel motel tax citywide. That would produce the largest influx of funds.
Correct.
Is there empirical data from other cities about I guess the person who comes pays both sales tax and hotel motel tax? So
yes.
You combine those two things.
Yeah, right now at checkout, anywhere inside the city limits of Oklahoma City, if you are a guest in a hotel, you pay 13.875% in addition to the cost of your room and any other. That's only on the room. So if you have food and beverage included in your bill, you don't pay the hotel tax on that. You pay, I think it's 8.875, I think is the correct number, on anything other than the hotel room.
So there's got to be lots of factors that cause tourism convention business to increase or decrease, but is there empirical data about if you increase that to 14.8%, what impact, if any, that would have on your business? Are people not going to come because it's 14.8 instead of 13.8?
Years ago, New York City got up to about 23, 24%. They saw a significant decrease in their tourism. Consequently, a number of and they had an arm's length of taxes added to your hotel bill. A lot of those came off. They came back down to about 15%. We are now seeing in a variety of places around the country where checkout tax, and the typical hotel stay, the person checking out doesn't look to see how the tax is broken up. They look to see what the total is. The typical total checkout tax, the high in the country right now is about 17.5% total. So we've got a little bit of room before we get to a position of being number one, which is this is not a position we want to be in, in this situation. But we do have some room. Now we're all taking a look at it to see, with the Boren tax increase, what happens, and so yeah, we're looking at it. I think a big part of the rest of that answer, though, Councilman, is what are we offering people? What are they getting when they come here? And frankly, a lot of the meeting planners, when they ask us about that, they want to know where that money is being spent. Is that money being spent to pave roads, Is it being spent, to haul garbage from the suburbs? Services that sales tax or property tax or fees or other things typically pay for in cities? Or is the money from the hotel portion of that tax going back into the tourism industry? And if you can show them a breakdown where they understand that that money is going back into the industry and they are supporting the things that they are actually having the opportunity to benefit from and use, they don't have as much problem with it. And that's one of the things we have seen for years and years. So I'm greedy. I'll admit it, I'm greedy. I would love to have a tax increase and all of it go to the CBD. But we've got to do this the right way to make sure that Oklahoma City continues to flourish. I wasn't here when the tax was increased the last time, but we went from 2% to 5.5%. And I don't think anybody, and Mr. Couch and the mayor were here, and I'm not sure who all else, I don't think anybody anticipated the significant growth we've seen in tourism when that increase came about. The value of those dollars has increased substantially. And I think we can do something similar to that again by doing it right. I think that's the big thing we have to make sure we continue to do, is to do it right. And to me, it's where this city has excelled.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
Yeah, David.
Mike, when you have groups in, do you ask for a survey as far as what did they like about the city and what did they think was missing and things like that? Or as you were describing this group that will be coming in, that's the intent?
The answer to both of those is yes.
Well, in that regard, then, do you ever get comments like, boy, we wish we had public transportation from the airport to the downtown area? And if so, is it a significant amount of respondents?
We don't get that response.
Okay.
The airport to downtown is so close, and there are so many options here that we already have, that it's not really a significant problem like it was in Denver or in some other major cities where the airport is 25 or 30 miles outside of town. We do a survey of every meeting group that we work with that goes to the meeting planner, and we ask them for comments they've heard. What did people talk about in terms of parking in the downtown area, retail shopping in the downtown area, things like that. Then we have some open-ended questions. So, we do get a lot of comments, but public transit from the airport, even the meeting planners don't have a negative impression of that.
Well, does that indicate that a lot of people take private transportation in the form of rental cars, or are there charter buses that, especially if they're staying in the downtown area, that they utilize, or can you draw a conclusion?
There are good shuttle opportunities to get you downtown. The Blue Van service, those guys do a really nice job, very economically. Some of the larger groups will, in fact, commission buses to bring groups, particularly depending on the arrival patterns. Okay. The rental car situation, again, depending on the group, it's part of the reason why Mark has worked so hard to expand the rental car availability out there. So, it's a situation we need to continue to look at. But right now, I think we're in pretty good shape, and just continue to monitor and look as we move forward.
Well, that would be a possibility for like a bus rapid transit line from the airport straight to downtown.
I think it would be something worth taking a look at, particularly as COPPA is making, or Embark, if I get the right name now,
right.
As they are making longer-term plans.
Larry, do you want to say anything? Okay. Mike, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for your support.
Very quickly on a couple of other items. Three things. First of all, the leading for results annual report is in your packet. There's a lot of data there. My senior staff goes through that on a monthly basis. We look at a lot of things, and it really does help us focus on, I think, the important things as we go forward. So we are data-driven as we go. Number two, sales tax collections for September were not strong. We're 3 months into it. We're down a little over $2 million under last year for the 3 months in total. We projected it to be pretty flat during this time. So we put a growth in sales tax rate. We didn't put it in the first 3 months. And so what we're below last year is about what we're below target. So it's a couple $1 million. And then the use tax is also $1.5 million on top of that. So we're about $3.5 million, a little over that, under target through the first 3 months of the year. Not a good trend as we're going forward. I've asked the departments to go back and take a look at it and see if they can identify 1.25% of budget adjustments to go forward. We want to make sure we're taking proactive steps and doing the right things so we don't end up in a crisis at the end of the year. And thirdly, and on a much more positive note, I want to introduce Chris Browning, who's here today. Chris is our new, stand up, Chris, our new utilities director. He started last Friday, and look forward to work with him. And next to him, on your left, is Brett Weingart, who's been long-term assistant director and has served very ably in the last few months as the acting director. So just want to point him out and know that you'll be working with him over the next several months and years. So thank you.
All right. Citizens to be heard. Paula Yokel. Good afternoon, Paula. Thanks for your patience.
Well, hang in there with me. I'll be quick.
Okay.
Paula Yockel, 10929 East Hefner Road. Mr. Mayor and honorable council members, again, we want to acknowledge and express appreciation for the positions being stated to media outlets by Councilman White and Mr. Couch regarding the concerns that we've been bringing. As my husband mentioned in the last couple meetings, we've had folks contacting us to express their shared concerns and common effects from living near land-applied sewage sludge. We were invited to meet with a small group of them this past weekend, and in our discussion, we collectively believed that the most beneficial course to take through this upcoming period of consultants and fact-finding is one of transparency. So we are presenting to you today with citizens' signatures a request for information that we would like to see published via web access with a reasonable time frame for public review and comment. We don't want to delay any process, but rather fortify it with a protocol of inclusion and transparency with those who are most affected. A key learning we've had in our research is that very few people even know the practice of land-applied sewage sludge even exists. So in an effort to quickly establish some common understanding, I'd like to level set on some basic facts. Ocean dumping of sewage sludge was banned in the late 80s due to its contamination of ocean waters. In '93, EPA provided guidance in the 503 rule and began endorsing land application of the material. Oklahoma City produces about half of our state's sewage. It is all land applied in a very narrow corridor across northeast Oklahoma City and Oklahoma County. The material is wastewater solids comprised of pathogens, industrial waste and solvents, metals, personal care products, blood, poisons, vomitus and excrement, paints, medical waste, drugs and pharmaceuticals, detergents, gamma agents, metal plating compounds, everything that is legally and illegally disposed of down a drain, toilet, or street drain is present. It is a significant material. Its hazards are then compounded by up to 35 miles of putrefying anaerobic travel time in our sewage trunk lines with very little, almost no digestion process. Then we modestly dewater it, add a lot of calcium oxide, achieve a 12 pH, and deliver it to the urban farmland. We haven't even talked yet about the effect of the high pH on our farmers' soils by mobilizing metals and limiting availability of macronutrients. Today, however, I do want to address an insightful question that Councilman Stonecipher posed at the last meeting. And I'm going to paraphrase here, but he said basically, what does EPA and DEQ have in writing about the process? Are there any concerns expressed? So today, I am submitting to public record a study from EPA's own Pollution Prevention Division and R&D in Region 4 revealing groundwater contamination from land-applied sewage sludge in Decatur, Alabama. I also recommend that you read EPA's 2009 Targeted National Sewage Sludge Survey identifying the prevalence of emerging contaminants. And please do not forget the study I submitted at last meeting from the USGS, which is the Department of the Interior, noticing poor groundwater effect in sludged areas of our North Canadian River Basin. Also, I submit DEQ's written definition per our state statute, Title 27A. Sludge is defined as non-hazardous. Please ask yourselves, what part of gamma-charged uranium, mercury, hexchrome, and staph bacteria is non-hazardous? Does it make sense to you, because it doesn't to us, that our sludge meets federal standards? It doesn't meet state definition. It does contain deadly poisons, but it is considered non-hazardous by definition. And this one gets me. Did you know that calcium oxide, our liming agent, was once used by the early English Navy as a blinding agent against the enemy? When the winds come sweeping down the plains, details like this matter to families who live downwind of 7,000 tons of the material, like my family does.
Paula, thank you.
Lastly, I submit our annual sludge discharge monitoring report created by EPA, required by DEQ, submitted and signed by our city officials. It's called the NPD's form. It stands for National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. The official documentation calls it a pollutant. So then we tell the farmers it's a fertilizer, and we tell the downwind neighbor it's safe. And I'm not meaning that to sound argumentative. I'm just trying to demonstrate we think it's time for a new conversation on the subject. It doesn't make sense to us, and especially when you live by it, it makes even less sense. So we appreciate the continued listening to our concerns. I submit this to public record.
Thank you. William James Jr. And William, thank you for your patience with us today.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. As I mentioned on the paper that I come before you because I have a complaint regarding a citation and an automobile accident and the police officer. The report was falsified. I spoke yesterday with Chief Berry, former Chief Berry, and I follow you, Mr. Mayor. I was in your interview with the lady from Mayor from Baltimore when you talked about a ticking time bomb. I was in an accident back in December, and I was crossing Lincoln Boulevard, and I was two-thirds across the third lane, and a lady hit me right at the corner. That's not the problem. The problem is the officer, when he came in terms of, and when an officer gets loud and shout, I don't know with him. He gave me a citation, which not when they left. There were two officers there, I might add, and I won't give their names now, but the situation is I got a citation for fail to yield to the person within the intersection. The lady was never in the intersection, and I so swear on the penalty of perjury, and will put up whatever amount, even my home, that if it's investigated, you will find, I mean, the lady came out of the middle lane and hit. She was never inside the intersection, and I got a ticket for failure to yield. All of the front of my vehicle was out of the intersection. Two-thirds of it was out of the intersection. So I definitely never passed, and I was cited under 32-219 of Oklahoma City Municipal Code. And why this is important is because I'm retired from the United States Foreign Service. I'm a retired United States Foreign Service. I'm also a disabled veteran. Talk about people say, well, thank you for your service. All I look for is justice. And when I talked with Chief Berry, he said, I showed him where there were problems in the report, where they contradicted each other. While they don't have body cams, which that other gentleman taught, the report, it contradicts itself. One can look at that report, and you see there are reviewers for the report. And as reviewers, I think you need to say that these reviewers, when you review these reports, you're there to see that it was done right. You can't just sign off on it. Because the person would bring to the city, it's cost me thousands of dollars rather than me just paying a couple $100. Because I'm an old guy now, and I'm not going to be able to live out what I have earned and what I got. And justice is important to me. And I know it's important. I know it's important to the mayor, and I assume it's important to all of you as well.
What did Chief Berry tell you when you talked to him?
He told me to go to court and show it to the judge. My problem with doing that is this. I have an attorney, and he's tried to show I had asked him well, if it was delayed and investigated, because I didn't want to go to court.
Yeah.
And the reason I don't want to go to court is because I've been to courts before, and same like before the Supreme Court. For the Supreme Court, the president has nominated a particular judge, and others don't want him. They don't always have the same opinion. So if you are looking at something and say, or you're a reviewer as to those accidents, say, well, this shouldn't have been there anyway. This guy shouldn't be in the court for something that didn't happen. I'm going to court for something that didn't happen.
Yeah, I sympathize with you. About 25 years ago,
I'm going to go to court because
I just want to tell you, I had the exact same thing happen to me. About 25 years ago, I was in a wreck, and I wasn't satisfied with the police report. So I understand. I mean, it's frustrating because, you know, it's days later when you look at it, and there doesn't seem to be any way to, you know, kind of recreate the issue or find witnesses or you know, and you know, not to mention the cost of going into all that. So I understand. Why don't you sum it up? I'll let you go quite a while. What do you want the council? What would you like the council to do?
Well, if it was, I mean, I'm going to court. I'm scheduled for court Thursday at 5 o'clock, and if it was delayed till it's looked at by an attorney in terms of if it's looked at, that would benefit. But if it's not and I go to court, I mean, I'm not going to drop it no matter what the verdict is. Even if it's dismissed, I'm not going to drop it because this shouldn't be happening. I am a very peaceful guy. As a matter of fact, I know you've let me go before, but as a child before I was 5 years old, I was tarred and feathered. But I hold no animosity against anyone because I'm also ordained, and God says forgive, and I do, and I love everybody. In fact, way back when, my grandfather was, his father was some white fellow. We don't know when. I mean, my family was part of the Taylor Trio, so like those people over here, I understand when you talk about history and all that. I don't hold the old stuff, and I don't carry on with that. But for today, because I've served abroad, I want justice. And I'll say that and go with you, and I thank you for your time, and I believe in you, and I follow you and everything. And all I'm asking is that tell the reviewers, not just signing these things, but review it.
Yeah, a reminder to our police officers that every case is important. And I hope it works out well for you, William. Thank you for coming down. Robert Biershank.
Mayor and Councilman, I'm Robert Biershank, 6000 North Midwest Boulevard, Oklahoma City, 73411. And I'd like to get off course a little bit on the ADA that we talked about earlier today. I'd like to see the council possibly, I don't know what code y'all used, a BOCA code or one of the other ones. I think all homes should be required to have a minimum of 36-inch door for any entryway, any walk-through door. I think it would be a great asset to the city, to the residents. And the reason I say that, I've had a couple of kin folks in wheelchairs. I've got a neighbor that's in a wheelchair, probably another one that will be. We're all getting older, and I think that we're missing the boat by allowing 24-inch doors. My daughter just built a new home out on the farm, a 24-inch door going into a walk-in closet. Now, if you're in a wheelchair, that's not going very good. So I would like to get the city council, and I will probably propose a resolution through Farm Bureau for the same thing next Monday night. And I would appreciate y'all's concern with it. And I'd like to comment and compliment Dr. Sheed on the transparency deal. I feel like we have quite a bit of cooperation. Mr. White and I have talked several times. I think we've had a pretty good dialogue. I hope the same as of all of you people, and I hope the same of us citizens that are up here on the biosolids and the Robert Wellington water deal. I have one issue with the CDM Smith consulting firm's assessment of 10 times more animal waste being spread on the ground than biosolids. It didn't happen in my neighborhood that way. Most of the animal waste in Oklahoma County, I guess the biggest contributor would probably be the stockyards. I think most of that's bagged up and sold as fertilizer. They have a big compost pile out there. On our farms, the cattle are spread out. We have grass buffers and so forth that pretty well take care of any nutrients. But for them to state that there's 10 times more animal waste put on the soil in the report that I read that y'all just received, there's got to be some mistake there. I think he needs to dwell on the new study y'all just, I think, authorized, is to study the structure of the alluvia sands. I think one of the big things, and I discussed it at the last meeting, we've got to get him to look at the way the water well drills are drilled and where they were gravel packed through the red bed. I think we have a tremendous potential for extreme pollution coming in. There's one instance where a sewer line was put in 35 years ago, 8 foot in diameter, went down to the North Canadian treatment plant. I would assume that probably the hole was dug at least 16 foot deep, possibly larger, because you have an 8 foot pipe in there. You have gravel pack around it. The gravel pack is going to make a conduit of transfer for anything from that area to another one. Below that area, in that particular area, there's water sand 20 foot down. And there are some irrigation wells in the area that are producing water from that 20 foot to 39 foot level. Well, when you pump an irrigation well, and I'm not condemning the guy that has it, I'm saying that the standards need to be changed. Another thing that needs to be changed, when I went to the Water Resources Board to get water well drilling records, half of them are not available. The reason being, it costs $50 to file a report, so many of the well drillers do not file one. And that is a big disservice to me as a citizen, to city as an enforcement agency, and to anyone that's relying on water from the Garber or any other aquifer. I think that's something we need to press for change. I don't think there should be a $50 fee for them to file something that affects public health and safety. I think it should be something that's built into their budget, not rely on the fees to operate that.
All right. Robert, thanks.
Okay.
Appreciate you coming down. All right, that's it. We're adjourned.